That's correct.
I want to show you what's been marked as Defendant's Exhibit 380. It'll show up there on your, oh, that's not it.
Can we take that down?
Did you show that to me?
I did, yes.
Okay.
Hold on 1 second.
We don't have a 380.
And-
You have
and
the
let's
on-point records, don't you?
I forwarded it to him. That's fine.
All right.
I'm guessing they need 377.
Your Honor, it's a page out of the on-point records that have already been admitted in their entirety.
Okay.
First of all, that's an on-point account statement record, is that right?
That's true.
And was that on-point account a joint account that you had with Dan Brophy?
Yes.
And actually, Mr. Breton, that's the wrong one. So we'll come back to that, okay? Just pull that down and we'll come back in a minute. The other thing I wanted to talk to you about that was just a little stray thought that had not made its way into an earlier conversation that we were having. James Denny talked about the fact that he could see that Dan's, underneath all the brush and everything, Dan's garden was actually just a beautiful treasure. Is that right?
That's right.
And did the two of you believe, you talked about the fact that you were going to sell the house,
Right?
but did the two of you believe that if you could get that garden restored to something of its past glory, that it would increase the value of your home?
Yes, we did.
So the two of you decided to get the house ready to sell.
Mm-hmm.
And that decision started to kind of come to the fore in what year, do you think?
Where we were truly starting to work on it, I would say was 2017.
Okay. But we can tell from your Dearest Dan letter that at least you'd been teasing through the idea of subdivision maybe as early as what, 2015?
Yes.
Okay. So as it starts to become sort of this idea that now is gelling, what did you think you might do after you sold the house? Did you know?
No. And we went through a lot of different plans.
Okay, we've heard testimony from people who talked about that you were talking about going to Portugal.
Yes.
Was that one of your plans?
I thought that would be fun. And I think Dan flirted with the idea, but in the end, he put a little pin in my balloon and said, you would be miserable. I would be miserable if we were that far from family. And I agreed with him.
Okay. But did you and Dan like to travel together?
We did. We thought we were at our best.
Okay. Did Dan offer a compromise to maybe moving to Portugal?
He did. He felt like what we should do is take a multitude of smaller trips rather than a big trip. And so that he could continue to garden and I could continue to do what I needed to do as well. And yet we would still have the experience of being together and going places that were fun and different.
Okay. In early 2017, did you do one of those trips?
We did.
What'd you do?
I was invited to speak on a cruise ship for a writers' conference. I have a talk I give called Redeeming Your Antagonist. You'd think I could remember. Redeeming Your Antagonist. And I said, you want to come? And he said, sure. And so we flew to Fort Lauderdale, took the cruise, took a cooking class, and came home.
Okay. Did you take another trip later in 2017?
No, I think, well, to the beach, yes, but we didn't really regard that. We regarded that as, a good weekend. That wasn't really a vacation plan so much, but we went to the beach several times.
Okay. And then was there more of a planned trip that happened right at the beginning of 2018?
There was.
And what was that trip?
Dan's favorite restaurant in the entire world, and we've traveled enough that I think it's a fairly thing. At one point, used to be considered one of the top 5 restaurants in the world. It's just outside of Victoria, and it's on Vancouver Island, and it's called Sook Harbor House, and it is in the town of Sook Harbor. It is a B&B, and it is a restaurant, but they were one of the first in the nation who did sustainable and local. And so everything you eat there comes from Vancouver Island, which, as you know, is not big. So we had eaten there several times over the last 25 years. I'm going to say 6, 7 times. I'm pretty sure we took Dan's parents there. It was just a place we really liked. And we'd never been able to stay at the B&B because we'd never had our timing right. Well, we discovered that we had an extra week for Christmas in there that we weren't expecting. And so we called Sook Harbor House and said, could we stay? And they said, well, we close for a month in, I think, the 5th or 6th of January. So we scheduled 3 to 5 days, I can't remember, and stayed at the B&B, which has, by the way, become a small hotel since then, and ate at their restaurant every day. And it was a great trip, and the food was fabulous. But to get there,
Whoa.
sorry.
Whoa. I know, if we're going to get there, that now we
Sorry.
are in the rabbit hole. So
Sorry.
was there another trip that you took after that?
We went to Monterey Aquarium again. We had been to Monterey a few years earlier when Dan had been asked to speak at a mushroom conference in Santa Cruz, and we'd driven down to Monterey. This time we stayed in Monterey, and
Remember when that was?
that was in March of 2018.
Did you take another trip that year?
No, but our next trip that we had planned was for the July break. Dan had a week off from school, and we were going to go to South Dakota to the Black Hills because I had never seen Mount Rushmore. And Dan grew up in that area of the country, and he wanted to show it to me.
So I don't remember which witness it was, but one of them talked about you being at that stage in your planning where you were just kind of throwing a dart at a map and had maybe new ideas each day about what you might do next.
I think that's pretty accurate for what was happening.
Did there come a time in 2018 where you started to coalesce or gel around a particular idea?
We did. In the fall, particularly when I was selling Medicare, I was looking for, because I was out in McMinnville and out in Oregon City and whatever, I was looking for property that I thought might work for us. And as we would discuss it, the more and more and more we discussed it, the more I looked. Dan didn't really look because we weren't really to that stage yet. What really happened is Dan had fallen in love with Delilah's property, and
Talk about Delilah Marvell.
Delilah Marvell. And so it had some advantages. He wanted to be halfway to the coast. He wanted to be in mushroom hunting location. He was places that he wanted to go. And so the more and more we talked about it, the more we kind of came to a little area that we would want to look in.
Okay, and that's the area around Banks that Ms. Marvell described.
Right.
I want to shift gears. I almost don't want to shift gears, but we probably need to and talk about insurance.
Okay.
You love insurance,
I do.
life insurance.
I do.
When did you buy your first policy?
I was in probably 35.
And you insured yourself?
I did.
Were you married?
No.
Did you have kids?
No.
Or you bought a policy?
Yes.
After you and Dan married, did you buy insurance to protect the two of you?
I did. We were doing our first trip overseas. We were going to the Orient, and before we left, we did our wills and we bought insurance.
And were those policies identical?
Yes, they were.
One on your life,
Yes.
one on Dan's life?
Yes.
And who was the owner of the policy that insured Dan's life?
Dan was.
And why was that?
Because when you own your own policy, you control it. You control who the beneficiary is. You control what happens if you have changes in your life. If Dan and I had been divorced in 1999, he could just change the beneficiary and he could have kept the policy. It would have been his policy.
That was a policy that belonged to him.
Yes,
And the policies that insured your life belong to you?
yes.
We had earlier, what's the dearest Dan? We had earlier talked about the Dearest Dan letter, and I wanted to pull that up again and ask you about a part of that.
Okay.
Could you pull up 203, Mr. Breton? On the second page of that policy, you scroll down, keep scrolling, scrolling. Oh, back. Can you see it? There in the middle of the page, it says the 23rd, $266 Americo.
Mm-hmm.
What are you talking about there?
That is a policy that we bought for Dan and scrambled to get it to him on time when he was 59 and a half, because after that point, he couldn't get it anymore. And it was,
That's a
sorry,
policy that insured Dan's life.
that's right.
But this is a letter that talks about the policies that insure your life.
That's true.
Why are you telling Dan about this policy on his life that costs $266 a month?
Because it's a special type of policy that's also part of our retirement planning. So it is a policy that we got that if I wasn't there to remind him, I wasn't sure he would remember what our plan was. But basically what happens on return of premium is you pay the premiums, and if Dan doesn't die, which was our plan, we get all the money back for the premium. So once again, this is another forced savings account for us. So at 78, we would have gotten back $67,000, something like that. I could be a little off, but I think I'm pretty close.
Okay, so up until this time that you buy the American policy, in fact, even when you buy the American policy, have you attempted to each time buy one policy insuring Dan, one policy insuring you?
That's true.
And did you try to keep it even?
Yes.
We've heard about a policy that was in place that was paid for by the school that insured Dan's life.
Yes.
Did you include that policy as part of your retirement planning?
Absolutely not.
Why not?
Because we didn't expect the school to be there when we needed it. You know, Dan had gone through a different culinary school. He'd left that school. That policy stayed with the school. It didn't stay with us. We didn't expect, if Dan left the school tomorrow, 31 days later, we would not have that policy. So we did not regard that as a real policy. I mean, it was a nice employee benefit, but that's all it was for us.
Okay, so you couldn't count on that taking you into your 70s or 80s?
No.
Okay. And the year that you bought this Americo policy, and I forget what the amount on that policy was that a $100,000 policy, the Americo?
Yes, no,
Okay.
yes, it was.
Okay. And at the same time, did you put a policy on your own life that had a $100,000 benefit?
Yes, I did.
But it wasn't an Americo policy?
No, it was not.
And the policy on you was just like a 10-year term policy for $100,000, right?
Right?
So why did you buy this different policy for Dan?
I would have bought the policy for me too if I hadn't been too old. I mean, this was a policy I regarded as a good policy for people who do not save, that would force us to save. Yes, I'd be the first to tell you there's no interest attached to it, but I would also be the first to tell you that having $67,000 come into us at one lump sum at the end of our 70s might be a real nice windfall.
Okay. You heard the testimony of our insurance expert,
Right?
and he said that you paid between 3 times and 6 times the premium each month that you could have paid for a simpler $100,000 term policy on Dan's life.
That's right.
So this is a premium that costs you between 3 and 6 times as much.
Yes.
But you pay it. What are you betting when you pay that?
I'm betting Dan will live and we get the money.
How long does Dan have to live for you to get the money?
20 years. Actually, it's a 19, but yeah.
So when he turns 78 is when, So that's the bet you've made.
Yes,
Now, we already talked about another policy that you took out that did create an inequality in this.
right,
And that policy was the one that, the policy that you took out in November of 2016 when you needed a commission
right.
to cover some cash flow issues that you were having
Mm-hmm,
and you needed the money quick.
mm-hmm,
And that was in November of 2016.
mm-hmm.
We talked earlier about Larry Schneider,
Mm-hmm.
and I think you were struggling for the term, but was the term you were looking for the contestability period?
Yes, it was. Thank you.
And that contestability period, do you understand it to be 2 years?
It is.
And I think what you testified to earlier is that if someone died within the 2-year period, the legitimacy of a policy was much more likely to be challenged by the insurance company.
At the very least.
Okay.
Uh,
But if someone died after the 2-year period, the insurance company's legal ability to challenge the policy became much more limited.
yes, it did.
So if you took this out in November of 2016,
Mm-hmm.
when would that contestability period end?
Either October or November when they put it into effect of 2018.
So the contestability period would have ended 5 months after Dan Brophy died.
Yes.
And you testified previously about the pressures that you were feeling and how you're sometimes resorting to Band-Aids and later resorting to more long-term solutions to the financial pressures you were feeling were real. Is that right?
They were.
You came up with some solutions, some short-term, some long-term. Were you feeling that same financial pressure by December of 2017?
No. No. In fact, by December of 2017, I could see that what we had put the plan, what had been an idea plan was actually going to work. You know, it wasn't just a plan in the air. It was a plan that was going to work. I could see our credit cards were being paid off. I could see I'd had a hell of a good Medicare season and that I could continue that and that would provide an income for our retirement. I could see that our bills were paid. We had money in the bank and we had money coming in, which would be the shortfall money that we didn't have in October. Uh, I thought we were over the hump. I thought things looked good, so good that, you know, I was kind of doing a little dance of happiness.
Okay. Did you ever, after December of 2017, did you ever feel that same financial pinch that you'd experienced before September of 2017?
No,
There's been some made of the fact that part of the pinch was alleviated by this loan that you took.
that's true.
But were you using that loan just to kind of keep your head above water, or was that loan going to be used for something else?
No, that loan was to get us back in the black with the house payments. And that loan was to get the house ready to sell. And the loan was to be repaid when the house was sold. That was the first thing that we did with the money afterwards. Even before we bought another piece of property, we repaid that money. And in the meantime, of course, Dan was making payments on that money.
But you also had we heard from Ms. Couch that your income went up in 2018.
Right?
And was that increase in income from 2018, these Medicare policies that you'd sold between, what, August and just whatever that period is?
Mm-hmm.
And that was something that you expected to continue year after year?
It was.
You're a romance writer.
Yes, I am.
What kind of stuff do you write?
Romantic suspense.
And we've heard from some of the other writers about writing devices or things that writers use to write their books. What kind of writing devices have you used in the past, or have you bought?
Bought or traded. Uh, for a while, I loaned some money to one of my employees, and what I held in, as their collateral was a pair of night vision goggles. I thought I got the better deal on that, real frankly, but he did come up with the money and I had to give them back.
Did those night vision goggles make it into, or whatever we call them, night vision?
Oh, yeah.
Did they make it into one of your books?
Oh, yeah. And I learned a lot about night vision goggles.
Um, what other kinds of things have you either purchased?
Well, we had expensive handcuffs. We had real handcuffs. We had fur-lined handcuffs. In fact, we had a couple of sets of those. We had, what else? Oh, we took a trip to Montana because I wanted to see some property that I thought would be a good location to set a story in that I never wrote. Uh, we, what else have I bought? Oh, man.
What about binoculars?
Oh yeah. We have a really nice set of binoculars, which started out as a writing tool, and as I moved on, they became a tool we held on to.
Okay. Uh, did you spend a lot of money on your writing?
Yes, I did.
Did that bother Dan?
Not at all.
Did Dan spend a little extra money on his cooking?
He did.
Did Dan have some really, really nice copper cookware?
So nice that when they were filming Grimm's TV show here, they called us and asked us if they could rent it from us. And we said, yes, you know.
And was that something that Dan just wanted? He just wanted it. He just wanted it.
He wanted it, but we made a concession on how we bought it.
And how'd you buy it?
Our birthdays are 9 days apart. And so every year for our birthdays, rather than buying each other a gift, we bought a copper pot.
Is that you built that collection of Dan's favorite cookware over a period of time?
Yes.
Can you describe just generally your writing process, your creative process?
I can. Uh, a lot of people plot more than I do. But what I do is I sit down and I like to have the story start to formulate. I like to know who all the characters are. I like to know what's known as GMC, goals, motivation, and conflict are. I like to work that through in my mind long before I put a pencil to a paper, or in my case, fingers to a keyboard. So I frequently have a large part of my story written in my mind before I ever sit down. And that means you spend a lot of time staring off into space. You spend a lot of time giving automatic answers to people who are thinking, you're not listening to a word I'm saying. You just kind of sit there and work it through.
Your Medicare practice took you, you talked about driving all these different places.
Right.
Did that bother you?
Oh, not at all.
Why not?
Because it was meditative for me to drive, because most of the time I'm thinking about my plot. Almost inevitably, I have a notebook on the car open with a pen where I'm writing along and driving along and jotting things down.
I want to shift again and talk about firearms.
Okay.
In 2017, did the seed of a new story come to you?
It did.
And how did that come to be?
I read an article about a guy in California who bought a gun online, put it together, and killed his family. And I am amazed by this. I'm amazed you're able to do this. But I'm sitting there thinking, what if it was a woman who was afraid? What if it was a woman who bought the gun online or bought gun pieces online and put them together to protect herself? And so once I'd kind of flipped the story in my mind, I started building it. Now, the cool thing about the article, and there was other articles that followed it, was that it had links in it. And the links took me to various sites that showed me what was available.
Sometime in November of 2017, is that the article that you're talking about?
Yes.
And the links that you're talking about, do you remember what they were to?
One was to ghostguns.com and one was to Ghost Gunner, something. There was another similar title to it.
Okay. Did you go there, after reading that article, did you go there?
I did.
Before you read that article, did you know that guns could come in kits?
No.
So as you're thinking about this story in the beginning, how did you imagine it would come together?
What I really thought is, when I was thinking about it, was that you would buy pieces one place or another. Maybe gun shops had them. Maybe gun show people. Maybe you bought them online. But I was thinking there's got to be these pieces available where you could put a gun together. And then, lo and behold, there are kits. You don't have to go and shop everywhere. You
Okay.
just.
So
Sorry.
was that a challenge in the beginning, trying to figure out, well, let me back up. The story that you had,
Right.
how did the gun parts fit into the story arc?
Well, that gets to be really important. The way I was going to write the story was each month a piece would come to her in the mail, and so that would be the beginning. And as the gun built, so did the story arc. And so did her character arc. And what did you learn from putting a gun together? And how did it compare to your life? How does that solve some of your problems as you're working through them?
So it was piece by piece, chapter by chapter?
That's how.
But did you know what pieces to put into your story before you found out about gun kits?
No, but I figured that I would research it. I mean, in detail. People love the internet, but real frankly, I don't know a writer who doesn't have a library card. And I don't know a writer who doesn't go to the public library to look up what they want. Yes, it's online, but it's not necessarily correct online. It's just online.
Okay, so let's go back to the New York Times article that had the links in it. How did you use that article, or how did you use the links?
Ghost guns had more appeal to me, so I went back to that site 2 or 3 times. And I will say that sometimes my lack of totally planning can be a problem. But they made it sound like it was really easy to put this gun together.
Was there a video on that site?
There was a link to a video.
Okay, and can you remember what the video was about?
It was about how easy it was to put this gun together. Yo ho ho, some guy whipped it out and got it together, and it was just nothing. I mean, it was harder than Legos, but not much, according to this video.
Okay, so you looked in November of 2017 at this site.
Right?
Did you buy a gun kit?
I did.
No, in November, did you buy a gun kit?
Oh, I didn't buy a gun kit then. No,
Okay.
I went back and forth on buying the gun kit.
How many times do you think you went to that site before you bought a gun kit?
Oh,
If
I'll
you
bet
remember.
7 to 10.
Really?
Uh-huh.
Okay, so now, you said there was a time that you came up to buy a gun kit. When was that?
December the 24th. Dan was working, and once again, these were good hours, so we knew it was more money. He had texted me he was on his way home, and I had been looking at this site, and real frankly, everything in our life was going well. Christmas was bought and paid for, it wasn't charged, and it was wrapped, and we were ready to go. I was drinking wine, which probably one might construe to be a mistake. And Dan had texted me on his way home, and when he walked in the door, I said, "Guess what I'm buying?" And I gave him a glass of wine because guess what I'm buying? That kind of thing always helps. And he just laughed and said, "Go for it." And that's where we ended up.
So you bought the gun kit.
I did.
as a gift to yourself?
as a gift to myself.
Just kind of generally, Dan was there when you made the purchase?
He was.
And he texted you before coming home to let you know he was on his way home?
He did.
And do you know how long it takes to get from On Point to, I'm sorry, I'm looking at my notes. Do you know how long it takes to get from Avamere to your house?
I would say somewhere between 6 and 10 minutes.
And let me show you what's been marked as, I want to make, I got nervous by the last one. I just want to look over his shoulder. I want to show you what's been marked as Defendant's Exhibit 377. It's an On Point bank record.
Mm-hmm.
And again, this is that joint account that you have with your husband.
Yes, it is.
And it looks like the date, at least that statement period, is from 12/9/17 to January 1st. Is that what it says, of 2018?
No, January 8th.
Okay, I have bad eyes. I wonder if you can scroll down, Mr. Breton, to a purchase that was made on December 24th. Do you see it, Ms. Brophy? You can see better than I can.
Well, I'm looking. Apparently, I went to KFC.
Can we scroll down just a little bit further, Mr. Breton? Maybe it shows up a little later.
Maybe. Oh, here it is. On December 26th, it shows up, ghostgunsgot.com.
Okay. So again, that was a purchase you made with your own credit card,
Mm-hmm.
or with a debit card, it looks like,
Mm-hmm.
out of that joint account?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I would move to admit, does this have a number, Ms.
Should be
Weinmiller?
377.
Okay, I would move to admit Defendant's Exhibit 377. I think the On Point records are in as a whole, but this is a sort of a standalone.
No objection. All right, 377 will be admitted. And just so I'm clear, is that 8 pages then?
Ooh, is it? Yeah, it is. It's
Okay.
the entire statement.
Bless you.
Okay, you can take that down. Thank you. After Christmas Eve, then you and Dan were planning for this Sook Harbor trip.
Yes.
And what happened before you left for Sook Harbor? Did you do anything? Was this gun going to get delivered while you were gone? This gun
Yes.
kit? Okay. And what, if anything, did you or Dan do in preparation for this trip?
Dan had the mail held, and which was, I generally dealt with the dogs and he dealt with the mail. And I took the dogs to the kennel, and he had the gun kit, had the mail stopped.
Okay. So the mail was stopped for while you were gone,
Mm-hmm.
and you came back. Did you come back over the weekend? Do you remember?
I don't remember exactly what day of the week it was that we came back.
Do you remember whether on the Monday after you returned, you went in to do these blitz calls, these Medicare blitz calls?
Right. I did that, and that usually takes, depending on how long they let you do it, anywhere from an hour to 4 hours.
Okay. When you came home that night, was the mail indoors?
It was.
And was the gun kit there?
Well, a box was there.
Okay.
And so I waited for Dan to come home, and we opened it, and he probably did not see the joy in it that I did, but I thought it was great to open it and see it.
Okay. When you opened it, counsel for the state had passed out this little plastic bag that was filled with, looked to me like 5 billion parts.
Mm-hmm. I think that count is accurate.
Yeah. When you opened that and saw little parts like that, and the other things that it was gonna take to put together this kit, was that a little daunting?
It was. It was. I was not expecting it to be quite as intricate. Uh, you know, they said, oh, the bottom part, they said the gun kit's 80% together. So you think, how hard can the last 20% be? Well, it turns out harder than I was expecting.
Did you ask Dan about tools that you would need to put that together?
Yes. I said, do we have a drill press? And he said, no. But I also knew that if we didn't have it, other people would. I
Okay.
wasn't that worried.
Did you talk to any of your writer friends about this story of the woman who puts together a gun from parts?
Oh, yeah.
Who did you talk to?
I talked to Darla
Darla who?
Lukenbaugh, and Sue was in the car, but I'm not sure how much Sue was paying attention and how much she was dozing. But we were debating the gun kit, and I would not say she used the word sucker, but it could have come up. She really thought this was not a particularly good idea.
Okay, and did you talk to any other writers about this purchase?
Oh, yeah. I talked to Jessie Smith, who actually knows a fair amount about guns. And I think her feeling was this is going to be a lot tougher than you think it is. And I'm thinking, oh, great.
But you did talk to writer friends about this storyline.
I did.
And did you tell each of these people that you talked to about the storyline that you'd actually purchased a gun kit?
Yes.
Your mother-in-law testified that, leaving the gun kit aside, your mother-in-law testified that you had actually said something to her about thinking about buying a gun, like a gun, not a gun kit.
Yes.
And just so that I'm clear, this gun kit, is that separate in your mind from the gun?
Yes.
Why?
Well, because the gun is a gun and it's for protection. The gun kit is a toy and it's for writing.
Okay. So do you remember having a conversation with Karen Brophy about thinking about buying a gun kit?
I do.
And do you remember about when that would have happened? If you don't, that's okay, I'm just
I
asking.
really don't. I really don't. I think the topic came up more than once, but not, I mean, it wasn't a constant topic. It was a fleeting topic.
Tanya Medlin has testified that sometime around Christmas of 2017, that she had a conversation with Dan
Mhm.
and also had a conversation with you about buying guns, not gun kits.
Right.
You weren't there for the conversation she had with Dan,
No.
but do you recall the conversation that she described having with you?
Yes. And Dan and I discussed, did we want to do this?
Okay. How worried were you about Dan going out mushroom hunting by himself?
Yeah, I was worried on two or three fronts. Uh, Mushroom hunters, and Dan is included, do not give away their spaces. Dan may have taken his class mushroom hunting, but it was never the places he regarded as his and special. He was frequently in the woods. Um, he, on more than one occasion, told me he had gotten turned around. He, on more than one occasion, told me he could hear hunters not that far away. And he, I was worried for him. And he went mushroom hunting a lot. He had places where he would call and say, I'm going halfway to the coast, and I knew where he was going. He had other places where he was going all the way to the coast. I know he and Nathaniel in the spring would go over to Astoria and go in areas they knew about over there. But mushroom hunting is not all that safe. I mean, you have a lot of people who are territorial. The mushrooms are worth a lot of money. And maybe more so to a chef than to, well, not than to somebody who makes their living off of it. And there's certainly people who make their living off of it.
Were you worried that he might be in physical danger?
Yes. Yes, from other people who were mushroom hunting, from being accidentally shot from a hunter who was too close or something. Yes.
When you and Dan would talk about buying a gun, was one of the reasons because you wanted him to carry a gun when he went mushroom hunting?
Yes.
What did he think of that idea?
I think he was quietly neutral on that until the gun came. And then he suddenly found he had a voice on it and he wasn't going to take it with him.
Sometime in the beginning of February, maybe January 31st, February 1st, did you actually use your computer to look online for gun stores in Portland or in Oregon?
Yes.
Did you buy a gun then?
No.
Do you remember what it was that prompted you to look for a gun store?
It had been a conversation that had gone back and forth between us for a while. And so, like any good writer, I'm doing research.
On February 14th of 2018, did something happen that kind of changed everything about guns?
February 14th was the Florida shooting, and it was a shooting in a school, and it seemed not worse than other shootings, but kind of worse in some ways. It got a lot of publicity that on top of the other shootings that had been in the area at the time. I mean, there was the Las Vegas shooting. There was, we were just killing too damn many kids, and yeah.
So,
And I reached the point where I said, Dan, it's time. And he said, okay.
did you then do some research online?
I did.
Did you research how much a Glock would cost?
Yes,
Did you research gun safety classes?
I did.
Did you research the Portland Expo Gun Show?
I did.
And why the Portland Expo Gun Show?
Well, everybody told me that it's cheaper. Go to a gun show, they'll negotiate, buy a gun there. And it was interesting when I got there that there were so many different prices for the same gun, depending on which booth you were at.
Okay. Before you went to the gun show,
Yes?
had you gotten kind of a ballpark idea of what you expected to pay?
Yes.
Did you take out, how are you going to pay for that gun?
Dan gave me $400 in cash, and I took $400 out of our joint account.
How much did you think a gun would cost?
I was expecting in the $600 range.
Okay. Now, you said that this time when you brought it up, that Dan said, go ahead and buy a gun.
Mm-hmm.
Was he enthusiastic?
No, I would not say enthusiastic, but I think he believed that if this makes you feel better, if this makes you feel safer, then this is what we need to do.
So, the gun show wasn't on February 14th. Do you remember when it was?
It was a Saturday that followed.
Okay. So if the Saturday that followed was February 17th, does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, maybe the 18th.
Somewhere in there, yeah.
Okay. And you went to the gun show.
I did.
Describe what you did at the gun show.
Well, when you first walk in at a gun show, you have to turn in a gun if you're carrying it. And I'm sort of surprised that not that made perfect sense. It's just that, I didn't know anybody who carried a gun with us. So I was surprised at how there was this long line to turn in their guns. But then you go into a room and they're set up like booths everywhere. And I walked around and I compared prices. I'd already decided that I wanted a Glock. And so,
Why did you want a Glock?
well, several reasons.
Had it been recommended to you
It
by
had been
anyone?
recommended to us. That was probably the biggest of the reasons. And also the gun kit was a Glock, so that I had similar guns in terms of, I didn't have different working parts.
Did you think that you were going to buy a Glock 19 that had been put together?
I did.
Was that your goal?
That was what I was thinking when I went in.
What happened when you sat down to actually buy the gun with the people from J&B?
This guy was not only a nice guy, But he said, you are going to be so much happier with a 17. A 17 doesn't have the blowback that a 19 has. And as a woman operating it, this is more of a gun that you will find easy to manage. And I thought, I don't need a 19. I need this gun that's easier to manage.
So you bought the gun that he recommended?
I did.
Did you use your ID?
I did.
Did you go through the clearance and
I
register
did.
the gun?
I did.
When you brought the gun home, did Dan look at it?
He did.
Tell me about that event.
Well, sometimes you think that if you do this, this will solve your problems, that you will relax, that you will stop worrying things to death. And it turns out that you look at the gun and you think, well, that didn't help. Dan looked at it and said, I'm not carrying it mushroom hunting. And I said, okay. And then he said, maybe we ought to look at selling it if neither one of us are enthused, if it didn't do what we wanted to do. And I said, okay. And I said, or I could take it apart and then I could put the other one together. And Dan said, no, we've seen you in action before. No, 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 no. Do not take it apart. And I said, okay, which made sense. It really did.
Let me ask, were you afraid that if you took the whole gun apart
Right.
and then put it back together that,
I'd kill myself in the process firing it when it fired backwards? Yes.
or that you'd create a dangerous gun? Is that what you thought? Okay. So you brought it home. Dan is not enthused.
Mm-hmm.
He's told you he's not going to carry it mushroom hunting.
Mm-hmm.
He's thinking maybe you should sell it.
Mm-hmm.
You raised the idea of maybe taking it apart.
Mm-hmm.
He says no.
Mm-hmm.
What did you do then?
I bought another piece of gun. I bought a slide. And I think I bought the slide almost immediately afterwards because I thought, okay, at this point, I'm obsessed with these gun parts. I'm kind of amazed at how obsessed I am. And part of it cuts down to the writing. But I bought it and I thought, well, I can take this bare piece apart. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And it's not a big deal. But that's how I bought a slide.
Was that within a couple of days of when you were on your way to a writer's retreat?
Yes, it was.
And was that the retreat that was held at Rockaway Beach?
Could have been. Yes, that sounds right.
Were you home when the slide was delivered?
No.
Let me ask you this. Let's go back to the gun show.
Okay.
If you decided to buy a slide at the gun show, could you have just bought one with cash?
Yes.
Like the extra money that you brought?
Mm-hmm.
Could you have just gone up to any one of those booths and negotiated a good price on a slide?
Mm-hmm.
And would they have asked for your ID?
I don't think so.
Would you have had to register it like you did the gun?
I don't think so.
So you could have just paid over your cash, left the gun show with a slide,
Mm-hmm.
and you wouldn't have had to leave your name behind.
Mm-hmm.
You wouldn't have had to leave a credit card receipt behind.
Mm-hmm.
You would have had to leave your home address behind.
Mm-hmm.
But this slide that you bought on the internet,
Mm-hmm.
did you have to give a credit card?
Yes.
Did you have
Well,
to
I used PayPal.
use PayPal?
Mm-hmm.
And the PayPal's linked back to your
A
Credit
bank
card.
account.
Is your PayPal account in your name?
Yes, it is.
Okay. I just want to make sure we have the right, I want to show you what's been marked in just a minute as Defendant's Exhibit 379. You can just play it now, thank you. It's going to show up on your TV.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm.
Again, this is your joint on-point account, is that right?
That's right.
And can we scroll down somewhere, maybe closer to February 17th, 18th? I don't know where it'll show up. Tell us when you see it, Ms. Brophy.
Okay.
Stop. Do you see? Oh, You see it yet?
No, I do
Okay.
not.
Is that it? That PayPal transfer on
On
226?
226, uh-huh,
And how much was that?
$364.99.
Okay. So that was a PayPal transfer, and did they require shipping information?
Yes,
And did you have that shipped to your home?
I did.
Brendan? Whatever that is. Oh. Oh, can I also show you what's been marked as Defendant's Exhibit 378?
Hmm.
And does that look like the transaction receipt for the slide?
It does.
And it says that it's shipped to you. Is that your real name?
That's my real name.
To your home address?
Yes,
It looks like the United States Postal Service was going to bring it to your house.
okay,
Is that right?
that looks like it, yes.
USPS?
Uh-huh,
Okay. So the slide that you purchased carried somewhat of a paper trail behind it. Is that right?
yes,
Your Honor, I would move to admit Defendant's Exhibit 378 and 379.
Any objection?
No objection, this already exists as a state's exhibit.
378.
Okay, all right. Well, they may be duplicative, but
Oh, sorry, Your Honor, what we have as 378 is not what defense is showing us.
Well, it is that first page. There's stuff attached to it.
What are you saying?
Are you only intending to this one page?
No, I think, I just had her look at one page, but I think it's, how many pages are in the document, Mr. Breton? Pardon me?
20.
20? Wow.
Yes,
Is
so
it
I would
budget?
have an objection.
okay.
I realized there were 20 pages, I'm
First
sorry.
2 pages, I do not have an
Your
objection.
Honor, I will
to.
modify that and offer the first page later, because that's the one that I think is important. Whatever's the actual receipt that shows the shipping address.
Is there an objection to that particular page?
No, it already exists as a state's exhibit, so
Okay,
no.
all right, so that particular page can be admitted as, this is Defense Exhibit 378.
Thank you, Your Honor.
And then
We'll
with
modify
regards
it.
to 379, is there any?
That's- No, Your Honor, that's the on-point reference. We don't have any objections to any of the on-point records.
All right, so 379 in its entirety is admitted.
Were you home when this slide was delivered to your house?
I don't think so.
Okay. And you listened to the testimony of one of these cell site location experts, and I don't remember which one.
Mhm.
But Dan was home.
Mm-hmm,
And do you, I think what they said was that you were in McMinnville at the time of delivery.
I think that's absolutely true.
And what would you have been doing in McMinnville, do you know?
It's Medicare. Or seen, if it wasn't because this was in February, it was probably seeing a Medicare client.
We saw a couple of different, there've been reference to a couple of different YouTubes or videos that you watched.
Mm-hmm.
And did you watch them with us? Do you remember seeing them real time?
Yeah, I had seen them before. It wasn't a total surprise to me.
Let's shift gears again. I want to talk about the week before Dan Brophy died.
Okay,
On the morning of May 26th
yes,
of 2018, did Dan injure himself?
he did.
What did he do?
He had decided to take a shower downstairs so it wouldn't wake me up. And he took a shower and he must have twisted or jerked this glass shower door we had because it suddenly shattered into a million little pieces. And I didn't hear it shatter upstairs, but Dan came upstairs and he said, "We've got a problem." And his palms were bleeding. And apparently the bottom of his feet were bleeding. So he'd gotten out of the shower and managed to make it upstairs. He was doing a class. He wasn't doing a class. He was on a panel for a class. at PCC that day. So I said, we got to go to the hospital. So he has Kaiser insurance, and we went to a Kaiser hospital that was as close to PCC as we could get. Uh, and he ended up having stitches.
Okay, so while Dan was getting cared for at the medical center,
Right.
what did you do?
I got in the car and drove over to PCC, and he'd given me a map as to where to go. And I went up to where the panel was, and I said, I know Dan Brophy's supposed to be here right now, but he's having this medical procedure, and he'll be here as fast as he can. And they were all real relaxed, and they said, that's great. You know, when he gets here, he gets here. And so then I drove back over to Kaiser, picked Dan up, who was finished close to then, and we went over there, and he went to his panel.
What did you do while Dan was giving his presentation?
He was in what I would call the student union building, although I'm sure it has a different name. And so in the bottom floor, there's a cafeteria type place and a lounge where you can sit. And I was going through my emails. I had my computer with me, and I was going through my emails, and
Did you get an email that excited you?
I did.
What was
I
it?
did. In the Witches trilogy, I had gotten an email from an editor saying that they would like to look at it.
I'm going to show you what, I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
Show you what's been marked as Defendant's Exhibit 209. Is that the email that you opened up?
That is, and I misspoke. I said it was from an editor, it was from an agent.
And I think I misspoke because I said it was the 26th and not the 25th.
Oh, okay.
Um,
Yes. And so it's an email that tells me how to submit it because they would like to see it.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Britton. I don't remember if this has been admitted, but if not, the defense would move to admit Exhibit 209.
Not sure either. Does the state object?
I think it's been pre-admitted, but we don't have an objection.
All right. It may have been, but in abundance of caution, 209 will be admitted if it hasn't already.
I confess to losing track. Over the next several days, over the next week, where was your head?
Oh, I'm trying to shape the story up to send it to this agent. It's a trilogy, and I'm finished with book 1, although it needs editing again. I'm finished with book 2, and I'm 60% through with book 3. So I have to make sure that I've got everything I need in book 1 that I'm going to need in book 3. I know that doesn't make sense, but you live and die by the first book. You can't suddenly introduce something in book 3 that because you need it if you didn't refer to it in book 1. So what I was doing was trying to finish my story, trying to get the first story together so I could send it to them, reading it through one more time to make sure there wasn't something stupid that stood out in it.
Was there something stupid that stood out in it?
Oh, there's always something stupid that stands out in it. That's, half of writing. You realize that after you've looked at this story 25 times, you misspelled the title, It's just one of those things that happens.
Was there a plot hole in, I think it was the third Witches book?
There was a huge plot hole, and it had to do with bending time and bending light. And I was frantically trying to figure out how to bend light in a tunnel and get my plot moving along. And there was several plot holes with it, but I was working on it night and day.
Okay.
I would say 97% of my time was spent on these characters.
When you say working on it night and day, were you working on it on your computer, working on it in your head, working on it in a combo of those?
All those above. I'm jotting notes places. I'm doing everything I can do to put this story together.
Were you completely immersed in that story?
Completely.
On June 1st, the day before Dan died, do you remember what you did?
Yes. We met for breakfast at,
Who's we?
Dan and I met for breakfast he had gone down to school to drop off his carts. Or at least I assume right now that that's where he'd gone down to do that. But he had gone down to school to do something. We met at the Six Corners Cafe, which is this little breakfast place that we like to go to that's had about 1,800 different names. But it's at the intersection of Sholesbury.
Beaverton Hillsdale Highway.
Yeah,
Let me help.
thank you.
What'd you do after that?
We drove back toward our house and stopped at St. Matthew's rummage sale. And there's a Lutheran church that has this great rummage sale every year, and we had talked about going to it, and we went.
Did you find anything at the rummage sale?
We did.
What was it?
Well, for Nathaniel, Dan had found a food dehydrator. And so I know that he had been in contact with Nathaniel, asking him if he wanted a food dehydrator before he bought it for him. And then I had found this kind of adorable little toy box that was a little beaten up. The wood was fine, the paint job needed serious work. And I thought, great, this is perfect. So I bought this little toy box because Nathaniel's wife was pregnant and we had a new baby on the way, and he had another daughter who was. I thought this would work out really well for them, so I bought this toy box.
Now, is that something that you did?
Yes,
Took
I mean-
things like that and restored them or refinished
Yes.
them?
it's very. It's a great thing to do when you're a writer because you don't have to think about a lot of the stuff you do. I mean, when you're slapping gray paint on something because you need a primer coat, you can do that in the dark. Well, you can't, but you know what I'm saying? You don't have to pay attention to every brush stroke. It's very meditative. You can think about your story.
So when you got home, did you actually do that, start to begin?
I did.
That chest?
I did.
And were you still pretty immersed in your story?
Yes.
What were you thinking about when you went to sleep that night, or did you go to sleep?
Well, it was another night where I wasn't sleeping well, and part of that I blame on age, but part of it I blame because I am trying to get this story solved so I can move on, so I can get it sent off. Because if it's got a, I don't want to be the slow one on the end of somebody who says, we'll publish your story for you. I want to be the one who's there and ready. So that was what I was doing, was, working through how to bend light.
You said that you had trouble sleeping. Did
Mhm.
you ever get to sleep?
It was probably off and on.
Okay. Was there a time in the night that you got up to go to the bathroom?
Yes, 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 but I think what you're referring to was I came to bed much later than Dan because I was working downstairs on some of this, and there was water on the floor, and I realized we had a leak under the sink, and I pulled up the wet towels and threw them in the sink and what have you.
Does Dan usually get up earlier than you?
Much.
And do you, does he get up the same time every day, or would you get?
I would say within a 30-minute time frame, he gets up the same time every day.
Okay,
Even on days he doesn't have class, he still gets up early.
okay. June 2nd, though, he had class,
He had class.
and June 2nd, he had not just class, but a special class, live fire, is that right?
Yes, yes.
What's the first thing you remember about the morning of June 2nd? Remember waking up?
I do. And I'm looking at Dan, who's leaning over the sink, looking at wet towels, going, what are these wet towels here for?
When you saw that, do you know whether Dan had already had a shower or whether he was planning to have a shower?
I don't know. I just don't know.
What's the next thing you remember?
Him going downstairs with the wet towels.
Do you know where you were when you?
I was
Saw
still
that?
in bed.
Okay. What's the next thing you remember?
I leaped up out of bed and put on as minimal clothes as I could.
You say minimal clothes, what do you mean?
I mean, tights and flip-flops. I already had a nightshirt on. And,
On most Saturdays, or most days when you don't have to go to work,
mm-hmm,
when you don't have to go to a Medicare kiosk,
mm-hmm.
what, how would you spend your mornings?
I'd go get coffee at Starbucks and I'd come home and get back in bed and write.
How many mornings in the last several years did you go without a Starbucks?
Well, not many at all. Dan and I used to joke that we were pretty sure we were building a retirement home for this guy.
So typically on a morning that you didn't have to be at work, you'd get up, you say you would leave your nightshirt on?
Yeah. You know, who's going to see me? I'm running to Starbucks. I'm going to the drive-in. I'm coming back home.
And then writing?
And then writing.
You remember putting pants on or tights on.
Right?
Do you remember anything else from that morning?
No. No. The next thing I remember from that morning is the phone ringing and it being Maxine.
And that's Maxine Borcherding.
Yes, it is.
We heard from her earlier in the trial.
We did.
And where were you when Maxine called?
I was in bed writing.
What did Maxine have to say?
She said, "Do you know what's going on at the school?" And I said, "No, what?" And she told me about the fact that Potluck in the Park had called her and there was some sort of police interaction going on down there. And so I said, "Let me call Dan. I'll call you back." So I called Dan and he didn't answer. And I texted him and I called Maxine back and said, "I'm not getting an answer."
When Maxine called you, did she talk to you about some sort of a news report?
She did. She said, "It's on the news." And I said, "Okay." So the whole time I'm dialing Dan, I'm flipping channels on the news to make sure, to see if I can see anything at all that tells me what's going on.
Okay, so you talked to Maxine and then you try to reach Dan.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know how you tried to reach him?
I know I called him, and I know he
Ask you
didn't.
this, why didn't you
Oh.
leave a message if you called him?
I may have, but I don't think I did, because if he doesn't answer his phone, he's going to see it's me and he'll call back. You know, and I texted him because usually he's better at texting, particularly when he's got a class going on, and he didn't respond. And I talked to Maxine and said, "I don't think I'm going down there," because you know how you can hear your husband laughing in your mind where you're saying, "Yes, I came down to rescue you," and he's going, "What are you thinking? If it had been a problem, I would have called you. You know this." And so hearing this in the back of my mind, but at the same time, I'm worried that this text message is going unanswered and there's police there. You know, this is not looking good. So,
At some point before you called your mother-in-law,
mm-hmm.
did you have any information about any more details about what was going on at the school?
Somewhere in there, I had learned there was shooting. Uh, at that point, I wasn't sure that I knew there was somebody was dead or even somebody was injured, but I knew there had been a shooting.
What did you do then?
I called my mother-in-law, and you know, Karen Brophy is a sweet, sweet woman, but she also has a core of steel, and I have looked to her to be the mother that I lost because
What did you say to Karen Brophy?
I said, "I don't even know why I'm calling you. It's just I wanted somebody to worry besides me." And Karen came back and said, I'm sending Jack down. You go down and I will pray." And I thought, okay, that's a plan. We'll do that. And when we hung up, I immediately put on clothes and went down.
Okay. No, I know there's been some confusion about this. Did Karen Brophy have to call you another time to prod you to go?
No, no, she did call me another time. She and I agreed there were 3 phone calls. Uh, she called me, the next time she called me, I was standing in front of the police, and she calls me and says, "What's happening?"
Okay, so I want to back up a little bit.
Sure,
You decide to go down to OCI.
I do.
Did you have to change your clothes? What'd you do?
Well, I'm still in a nightshirt. So yeah, I had to put on clothes. I may run to Starbucks in a nightshirt, but most of the time I'm not running around downtown in pajamas. And so I put on clothes, and I didn't take a shower. And I know that because I had paint on my hands. And I leaped into the car and hitting the buttons as I'm driving, trying to find more news reports. Now, I don't know exactly when I figured it out, but I knew by the time I got to school there had been a fatality.
Describe, just kind of help the jury understand what you're feeling, what's going on in your head as you're driving to OCI.
I'm feeling, that feeling in your throat where you can't swallow and you think you want to throw up and you aren't throwing up. And I realized that my hands hurt, and I looked down and I realized my hands hurt because I'm white knuckling the steering wheel with one hand as I'm pushing the buttons with the other. And I'm feeling really mixed. If I get down there and it's nothing, Dan is going to laugh. But that's the worst that can happen. The best that can happen, I can get down there and everything will be okay and everything will be fine and what have you. But the fact that I still have an unanswered text from Dan, the fact I have an unanswered phone call from Dan, and there's police everywhere down there, and there's been a fatality, I am not thinking things look good. I am I am working myself up into a state without knowing anything. And I can also hear Dan in the background going, "Well, you know what we say, it's never too early to panic." And I know that I'm doing that, but I can't seem to stop myself from panicking at this point.
When you got to OCI, what did you do?
I kind of found a place to park. I kind of invented my own little parking spot. And on Jefferson, at the corner, there's yellow police tape all the way across. So when you get down to Jefferson, you absolutely have to turn on, what street am I on? 17th. You absolutely have to turn on 17th because the police aren't letting you through. And there's a cop car right in the middle of the yellow tape. And I walk over to the cop car and I said, "I'm Nancy Brophy." And he doesn't even ask what I want. He said, "I want you to wait over there." And I said, "Okay." And I went over to where he pointed, and he said, "Somebody will be out to see you."
What
And
could
so
you see from where you were waiting?
I could see lots of people. There was lots of people milling around. But the most important people I could see milling around were the people Dan worked with. Woody Bailey, um, Brian Wilkie. All these people are standing around, and nobody.
Can you find Dan?
No. And he would have been with those guys. These guys were his friends. And I know he would have been there and he wasn't there. And that worried me a lot. Just a minute. Just a minute. Hold on. Anyway, this worries me that I'm seeing all these people who know him. It worries me that every time I look at the people who know me, they're not looking at me. They're looking down. They're looking away. And I'm thinking, this isn't good.
What happens then?
The police come, this police woman and a couple other people come and they get me, and we walk half a building and they're saying, "Stand over here so you're out of the light of the media." And I said, "Okay." And I'm crying. And a police woman who if you asked me later, I would have told you was 100 pounds, but it turns out she wasn't, uh, reaches out and hugs me. And that's the exact moment when I knew. Just a minute. When I knew Dan was dead. And I knew it because I don't know how often you've been hugged by the police, but I don't get hugged by the police all that often. And so this is not a good sign. And she's hugging me and I'm crying. And apparently, according to the tips woman, wailing, um, which didn't really horribly surprise me when she said that. And then two detectives walk over and said, we'd like to talk to you, and led me to the van. We're not even 5 feet from the van when Karen Brophy calls me again.
What do you say to Karen?
She said, what do you know? And I said, it's Dan. And Karen starts to wail, and I want to wail, but I'm dealing with the police who are standing right in front of me, and I have to tap everything down, and said, I'll talk to you later when I'm talking to the police now. And she said, okay. So we hung up the phone. It was a very short call. And so
Did you go into the van, the police van?
we got into the van.
Who's inside the van besides you?
Well, the van has a table in the back, and so I've slid around to where I'm kind of at the very back. Detective Posey sits next to me, and Detective Merrill sits across from me, and that's who's in the van. You know,
What's going on in your head while you're sitting there?
I'm trying to pull myself together because, these guys want to talk to me, and they're the police, and I'm okay with that, but everything in my mind is screaming, Dan is dead. And I'm really having to struggle to get that out of the way so I can answer questions semi-intelligently when they ask me, and that's, once I went through menopause, my hands were never cold. And what I can remember is my hands were ice cold. And my heart was thumping, 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 thumping. And I'm probably sniveling just like I am now. And all I really, really, really wanted was for them to tell me it was a mistake. You're wrong. This is wrong. Yes, he's hurt, but he's not hurt bad. He's certainly not dead.
Did you try your best to answer their questions?
I tried. I tried. I tried to pull it together enough that I could sound like I knew what I was doing. But most of the questions that they were asking, I wasn't thinking about the questions. I was thinking about what is his routine? Okay, here's his routine. This is what he would do. I'm sure this morning was the same, except,
Whose morning do you think they wanted to know about that day? When you're talking to Detectives Posey and Merrill, whose morning did you think they were focused on? Yours or Dan's?
oh, Dan's. I don't think they gave a rip about what I was doing.
Is that what you were trying to help them to understand? What Dan
Yes.
was probably doing?
Yes, so that maybe some weird little thing had happened and they would spot it right away and say, aha, you know.
They asked you whether Dan owned guns and whether he might have brought a gun to school. Do you remember that?
I do. I
What,
do.
what did you think? Did you get a sense of why they wanted to know that? Or did they tell you why they wanted to know that? Why they wanted to know if Dan brought a gun to school?
Well, I assumed, and perhaps this is just assuming, when we're talking about a shooting, there are guns involved,
Okay.
you know.
So when they asked you about Dan's gun ownership, or
Mm-hmm.
did you think they were asking you about a gun kit?
No,
Did you think they were asking you about gun parts?
no.
What did you think they were asking about?
I thought they were asking me about the Glock I thought was sitting on our closet shelf that hadn't been messed with much since we bought it.
I don't want to get too far into your politics, but is it fair to say that they are somewhat left of center?
I think that would be fair, yes.
Okay. And for many years, would you have told people that you are anti-gun?
I would have. My first husband was a police officer, and he had a gun collection. And we negotiated when we were married that he, in fact, would not have the gun collection in the house. Yeah, I felt that strongly.
Do you have good friends and family members who are adamantly anti-gun?
I do.
Would you say that before June 2nd that would you say you were still anti-gun?
No, I would say my thinking had shifted on that over the last 2 years. That the country had gone crazy, and we were having all these school shootings, and that didn't happen in the last 2 years. That's been over the last 10. But I was less anti-gun than I had been in the past. But I was more worried about our safety than I ever had been.
On June 2nd, after you learned that your husband had been killed with a gun, how did you feel about your decision to buy a gun?
Well, in the lighter moments, I thought it was karma kicking me in the ass. But in the heavier moments, I thought, we own a gun and it didn't protect us. We bought a gun to protect us and it didn't do its job. Sorry.
You told the police that.
Wait, I need to wait just a
Sure,
minute.
I'm sorry.
No, I'm me. Okay.
You told the police that you thought the gun was ugly.
I think at that moment, I'd never hated that gun more than I ever did in
You
that
told the police that you were embarrassed to have bought the gun.
I was.
You told the police that you decided you really weren't gun people.
Yes.
Were you embarrassed at that point by gun ownership?
Yes, I was. I was embarrassed that we had a gun and it was at home and Dan was dead. And I think embarrassed is only one of the emotions I was feeling at that moment.
After you talked with the detectives, did they ask you to speak with a young woman?
They did.
And did she testify in this case? I don't remember.
She did.
And at the end of that conversation, did she give you a little booklet?
Yes.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as Defendant's Exhibit 237.1. It'll show up on your screen there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes.
And what was that inside the booklet that she gave you?
Yes. But I didn't open the booklet when I got home. Sue Lute, Darla Lukenbaugh, and Linda Smith had come over, and one of them opened the booklet and said, "Hey, there's really good information in here." And that was when I looked at it and thought, these are things I need to do.
Among the things that you need to do, did they tell you to notify insurance companies?
They did.
And can you scroll down and look at all the things that they tell you to do? Oh, you can't. He has to do it for
I
you.
know,
Ms.
I know.
Brophy.
But I'm seeing one of those comments right
Okay.
here.
Is it too little now to see, or are you good?
Okay, so it says notify insurance companies, including automobile insurance, of immediate cancellation and request any refund. Carefully check all life and casualty insurance and death benefits, including Social Security, credit union, trade union, fraternal, military, etc. And there's some place in here, or maybe it was in another sheet, but that it says, get your insurance policies together, get your will together.
Okay. Sometime in the next couple of days, did you try to find the will?
Yes.
Did you
Yes.
find it?
I had, yeah, where I thought it wasn't. Karen Brophy came over several times in those periods, and at one point or another, she and my niece Rachel, they said, "What do you think you need to do?" And I said, "I need to find the wills." And we went through my upstairs bedroom was an attic, and so it's long, but it has these cute little cubby holes off of it that are storage for stuff that, in our case, we stored Christmas ornaments in that and other things along those lines. But we went through everything in there because there was also boxes we hadn't unpacked from the fire we'd had 10 years ago. And I said, I haven't seen this will in a while. And so we're going through these boxes trying to see if I'd tucked the wills in there.
Did you begin to pull together all the life insurance policies?
Life insurance policies were easier for me to pull together because I had a file cabinet that had life insurance in it. So it wasn't that hard for me to pull them together.
Based on your experience, what was your sense of how quickly a life insurance company would pay a death claim in the case of murder?
I'd never had a client who had been murdered. I had no idea. But when I talked to the insurance agents, the insurance companies, because you call them and you say, I need to set up a claim, and they ask you questions, I immediately began to realize it was going to be, this was not going to be a quick payout by any wild stretch of the imagination. That, they said, well, send us this, this, and this. And so I'm taking notes and saying, okay. But part of it was stuff that, I didn't have even yet, uh, you know, uh,
Did one of the insurance companies tell you that you should call the police to get a letter of exoneration?
they did. That was Forrester's.
Before you made that call, did, did, did you talk to your sister?
I did.
Is your sister a lawyer?
Yes, she is.
And when you told her that's what the insurance company had told you to do, what was her reaction?
It was strictly humor. She said, yeah, that'll be happening. That's kind of sarcasm that runs in our family anyway, where they were saying, uh, you know, uh, and Holly and her law partner had dealt with a lot, because they're probate lawyers, had dealt with a lot of these things. And I relied very heavily on her in those days as I was quizzing her on what I needed to do and what have you.
We've heard the call that you made to Detective Posey
Yes,
a couple, and I don't remember now exactly when the call was made, but it was soon after Dan's murder, is
it
that right?
was.
I want to move forward again.
Okay.
After you were, when you were arrested?
Mm-hmm.
When was that?
September the 5th, I had gone to a United Healthcare meeting, and I had come home, and I needed to uh, fax. I was having, what was it? I was having a printer problem at that point, and I needed to fax something to someone, and so I'd driven to Office Depot and faxed it uh, and come home.
And you were greeted by police?
I pulled in my driveway, and a car I didn't know pulled in right behind me.
Pretty soon you were standing in the middle of your lawn in handcuffs?
Pretty soon, that's exactly how that happened.
At some point, soon after you were arrested, the police described to you the evidence that they had, or at least some of the evidence that they had.
Yeah, I sat in a holding cell for, I'm going to say, well, I got arrested 2 o'clock. I'm going to say it was between 6 and 8 o'clock. They finally.
I want to just ask you some specific questions. Though.
Okay.
Did you learn that the police had video, or were you told that the police had video of you driving in Beaverton?
Yes.
Did that surprise you?
No, I could believe that.
Okay. Did they tell you that they had video of you near the murder scene?
Yes.
Did you believe that was true?
Not for 1 second. I thought, they're making this up. This isn't true.
So shortly after your arrest, were you represented by a lawyer named Katie Dunn?
I was.
And at some point, did Ms. Dunn come to show you some of the evidence in the case?
She did.
And did she show you a photograph that kind of shook you to your core?
She showed me a photograph of what looked like my van and what looked like me in it and what looked like me in clothes I recognized,
What
which
do you mean
was
clothes you recognize?
that nightshirt that we've talked about, the nubbly black one with the white lace applique. And I was obviously somewhere near the school. I can't remember if the backdrop uh, was Bellagio's or whatever. I wasn't that involved with the backdrop, but I can tell you it looked like me. I can tell you that I was, oh man, I was frightened to death. You know, I was, if I'm, you know what they say? They say old age isn't for sissies. So what happens is I turn 65 as I'm starting to lose my eyesight. Then I'm starting to lose my hearing. I'm looking at this and thinking, oh man, I'm now losing my mind, because that's what you think. You think, how can this have happened and me not remember this? How am I sitting here in a vehicle and have absolutely no memory of how I got there? And they're saying it happened at this time and it's video stamped. It's not like it's, you know, trust us, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. It's this time. It was not that. It was this picture. And I'm sitting there thinking, I'm not even sure what I was thinking, to be perfectly honest, because even now, as I think about it, my mind kind of goes blank with the horror of it, you know?
Are you familiar with that Goose Hollow neighborhood?
Oh, very much so.
How familiar?
Probably the entire time I have spent in Portland has been associated with the Goose Hollow neighborhood. I went to school there. I worked at 19th and Flanders for over 10 years. Dan taught there. Of all the neighborhoods that I'm comfortable with and that I feel I know where I am all the time there, that would be Goose Hollow.
And have you written, kind of used the Goose Hollow place as a writing place?
I have.
What's attractive about that neighborhood for writing?
Well, one, it's shady. Two, even though I know it is a home for a great many homeless people, and I know it is a neighborhood that has a lot of drug uh, people associated with it, I still felt safe there. I had been there enough that it was just comfortable. It was more comfortable, in fact, than the neighborhood I'd lived in for 20 years. And
When you would come into Portland from Beaverton,
yes,
um, how would you come into the city?
uh, I'd leap on 217, leap on 26, get off at, what's that exit called? The one right after the zoo that takes you right down, past, right down on Jefferson.
Okay. Is that typically how you enter the city?
Yes.
Later, after Ms. Dunn had shown you this photograph,
Yes.
uh, did you watch videotape surveillance of the footage taken near OCI?
Yes.
Did any of that video spark any memory of what you might have been doing on June 2nd?
Yes. Uh, on, so I am seeing myself sitting at this park writing. Uh, and the reason why this sticks out is it was a parking lot and it was empty, but there was a white van there. And there was some guy who kept walking back and forth, walking back and forth, walking back and forth. And I think he was working on the van, but it was just enough to throw me out of where I was that I moved. I said, no, I can't pay attention to him and think about what I need to think about. And so I moved the car.
So in this memory,
Yes.
is it a real memory? I mean, this is a real memory, right?
Yes.
What are you doing when you're in the car?
I have a pad of paper. I'm jotting things down. And uh, it's a pleasant day. I can remember that because it wasn't raining. Uh, and it's shady. It's, I'm just sitting here pulling it together. But that's when I can remember is that it would be a place I would have felt very comfortable writing. And so I'm sure that that is a true memory.
Do you know whether, you said you had written in that neighborhood before,
I have,
and you're saying that this video triggers this memory.
yes,
Do you know whether this event that you're describing occurred on June 2nd?
no,
Do you know that it didn't?
no.
There was testimony from your cousin
Yes.
about coming to visit you in August
Mm-hmm.
and having you get lost while driving home from the airport,
Yes.
and lost again when you were driving to the forestry center.
Yes.
How many times had you been to the forestry center?
Hundreds. We did a lot of catering there. The zoo was right there. We'd taken our granddaughter to the zoo. We'd gone to the zoo. The mushroom show is held at the forestry center every year. I've been there hundreds and hundreds of times.
Were those 2 times that she described the only times that you got lost?
Oh no. I spent a lot of that whole summer pulling up my GPS and trying to figure out where I was and where I was going.
Can you just describe, Your Honor, are you about to, you're looking at the clock?
I am, but I think you've got time for a question and an answer, so let's
Okay.
go ahead.
Can you describe generally, just describe for the jury, the days, weeks, and months after June 2nd? What's going on in you?
Okay. Dan dies. And I'm walking around in a fog. And I have people who are coming to see me all the time and are really working hard on taking care of me. Making sure that I'm eating right, making sure that I'm taken care of. And just about the time that I think I can probably start coming back to life, my brother dies. And so it's like another body blow. So now, because I was left as the executor of the estate, I'm going back and forth to Texas, functioning. I'm putting on my, I'm okay face. Oh, I'm okay. And my smile that is neither sincere nor humorous or anything. And I'm getting through my days. Step, step, breathe, step, step. And you know what they tell you? They tell you that when you grieve, you go through these 5 steps. And we've all read this. We know this. We know the 5 steps. It doesn't work like that. They don't tell you that the steps, that it's not a little smooth transition. Okay, now I'm in this step. Now I'm in, no. I could go through all 5 steps in the morning and still be ready for the afternoon. I am in a fog. I have no idea what's going on 90% of the time. And fortunately, I have people who are just kind of stepping into my life and helping me out. My family sent Susan to me, and I wanted Susan to come. It wasn't that, but they keep her with me until they think I should be able to function. And I'm probably alone for a week then when my cousin Janet comes. And all it is my family saying, we're with you. We know you're suffering and we're just here to help if we can. Then my Uncle Ed dies. And when Janet described him as the Mr. Rogers of our family, he truly, truly was. He was probably one of the nicest guys in the whole wide world. And then I get arrested, and that's my summer. And I'm thinking, nowhere in there have I had time to grieve for any of the losses, much less Dan's. And I'm in a fog, and I go into the one thing you can tell you when you get arrested, there are two things that never happen. It is never quiet and it is never dark. And I, it's been 4 years since Dan died, and I know one thing. I know I still haven't grieved appropriately for him. I know. I, I know in 4 years I should be in a different place than I am. And I think a lot of that is because of that summer and how it happened.
Go ahead and take our break now. We'll come back about 3:36, 3:30, I'm sorry, 3:32.
All right.
All right, please be seated. When you're ready, Ms. Maxfield.
Thank you, Your Honor. When we broke, you were talking about the fact that that same summer there had been other losses.
Yes, it was.
I just want to have a better sense of just kind of what's going on with you during the summer after Dan died. We talked about the fact that you got lost, but were there other ways that you were just disoriented?
And again, if you wanted to take off your mask, you could.
I'm sorry, thank you. Yeah. Oh, just weird shit. I found food in places that it shouldn't have been food. Like the tomatoes were in the linen closet. And, you know, I was constantly having to think of my way through every step of my day, saying, okay, we're going to do this now. Step, step, breathe, step, step. Yeah, Dan used to claim we had a pair of glasses within 10 feet of us at all points, and I went through periods where I couldn't find a single pair. It just, everything, when I went through the house, when I went through the house, every room was memories. And they were all good memories, but they were all sad memories at this point because Dan wasn't there. My friend Rita came to see me, a couple of years before. And I was cleaning up and I turned to Dan and I said, you know, I could use your help here. And Dan says, what do you want from me? I have put out the welcoming squash and all over the living room, tucked into all bookcases and everything, were squashes, winter squash, because he grew winter squash. And so now when I'm sitting in my living room, I'm looking at this and I'm remembering the winter. I'm remembering the winter squash, and I'm laughing and crying all at the same time. And that's how the whole house is for us. Uh, you know, and I expect him to walk in the door any day and say, they made a mistake. I don't know how it happened, but here I am. I saw him walking all the time. He would be a little ahead of me, and I would want to run up to that guy because there'd be something about him, and I knew it wasn't him. I expected him until actually fairly recently to walk into the trial and go, what the hell is going on? He probably wouldn't swear that much, but you know, he's gone and he's not gone. He's with us all the time. You know, I talk to him every day. He's a little quieter than he was, but I'm sorry.
That's okay. That's okay. People have testified in this court that you didn't display the appropriate grief.
Yeah,
How do you feel about public grief?
I hate public grief. I don't even like crying when I'm alone. I think crying is so worthless. It doesn't accomplish anything. You know, I think this is the fact where I'm sitting here now like I'm a watering pot gone astray. You know, it's just embarrassing. You know, how do I feel about crying? I hate crying, but I really hate public crying. And when somebody dies near you, there is a real thin line between sympathy and pity. And man, when you think you're starting to cross over that line, you really, really just want to be away from everybody. My whole plan after Dan died, I had a plan. It was to go upstairs, pull the covers over my head, and wake up in 2050. You know, it wasn't to have to deal with Mark's funeral and Uncle Ed's passing and, you know, all this stuff. So people may people tell you all the time, they say, oh, there's no right or wrong way to grieve, you know, you'll work through it yourself. And then they're sitting there with a check mark list saying, oh no, she's not showing enough emotion. You know, there's no right or wrong answer here, because, well, there is a wrong answer, and it's always a wrong answer no matter what you're doing. So they may feel that way. I certainly feel I didn't grieve enough, and I still feel that way. But you know, if people think looking at me, I wasn't sad or wasn't brokenhearted over losing my husband, they would have been wrong.
After Dan died, um, you prepared to get that house sold quickly, is that
I
right?
did.
Why is that?
Oh, okay. So I've got all these deaths going on around me, and then I get the cheery little news that I'm not on the note, and Wells Fargo can, whether I'm behind on the payments or not, does not matter. They can foreclose on the property because the note holder is dead. And I'm thinking, oh man, so now I get to add this to my list of stuff. You know, if it was up to me, we could have waited another year to have sold the house, except that, except now I've got Wells Fargo breathing down my neck. And he said, be careful, don't let Wells Fargo know. Well, what does that mean? Does that mean I don't talk to Social Security? Dan wasn't on Social Security, so that wasn't a big issue, but you know, do they not read the papers? Do they not say, huh, look at this, a guy died? It wasn't like it was a big secret, but uh,
Were you in a hurry?
I felt more like in a hurry once I heard that news. I felt like I didn't have any leeway.
Did James Denny and Tamara Alva pick up the pace of trying to get that backyard cleaned up?
They did, but it was also summer and it dried up enough that they could get the big equipment back there.
And did you have friends coming over to help you get things cleared out?
Oh man, everybody helped. I mean, honestly, you really find out who loves you when something terrible happens, because people came over and said, I'm here, what can I do? Uh, and the people who didn't say that, when they saw me, said, if you need anything, call me. Uh, Friends organized other friends, and they would come over in groups to help me pack. Uh, Susan called her boyfriend and told him to come up. You know, uh, it was like they were trying to make up for how much Dan had meant to me, because they knew how heavily I relied on him.
Part of cleaning out the house was to clean out a lot of Dan's stuff.
It was.
Um, we heard about for example, we heard about the downstairs.
Mhm.
It's just filled with canned goods.
I gave Jack half-gallon containers. I gave him 48 half-gallon containers of fabulous stock so that he could use it at the homeless shelter. And it was duck stock, and it was chicken stock, and it was turkey stock, and it was beef stock. It was the kind of thing that if you were a foodie, you would have said, I'm moving in here. We had a stove where if you were a foodie, you would have said, I'm moving in here. You know, our house was dedicated to Dan's cooking in lots of ways.
And all those canned goods, did you try to find homes for that?
I did. Some of them, I thought people were going to start closing their windows when they saw me coming, because, oh no, they'll never give us any more stuff. You know,
What about What about some of the other things like cooking things and utensils and things like that? His multiples of tongs and,
We had enough friends who were foodies or cookers or chefs or what have you, that a lot of that stuff I was able to give to people who I knew would use it. Uh, but some stuff, we gave to Nathaniel specifically because we knew that he also loved to cook and there would be things he would like.
who's we?
Dan and me. Sorry, he's not here. I'm sorry.
How many different people do you think were in and out of your house helping you move things around? Or pack things up or throw things away? Both friends and people who were hired, how many do you think came in and out?
Probably somewhere between 25 and 35.
Did you know them all?
Yes, I did actually.
Well, what about the people like that, all my brother's guy?
No, yeah. Okay. I didn't know those people, but that was, and you're right. I didn't know them all. I didn't know the guys that Tanya sent over. I didn't know the All My Brothers guys. Uh, but they came for a specific piece of what I wanted, what I needed to have done. And for the most part, not Tanya's friends, but for the most part, they were paid for it. You know, uh,
Did you watch every box get packed?
oh Lord, no. Most of the time they said, just leave, just, go find something else to do and let us do this. Uh, you know, we would, at the end of a day where I felt like I had done nothing, which was probably pretty good, accurate statement of what I'd done, we would have 20 boxes that we'd need to take to storage, you know. Uh, and Susan organized everything. I mean, she has some strong organizational skills. And when the police got there, they must have just groaned when they saw how many boxes were in there. Because a lot of the stuff I couldn't get rid of, you know.
The police found the gun kit in storage.
They did.
Marked GK.
I packed that box.
You gave them the gun, the Glock 17
I
that
did,
had the little zip tied through it.
right?
But there isn't a slide in evidence. You know where that slide is?
On the day I was arrested, if they had asked me, I would have said it was either in storage or in the house. I hadn't seen it for a while, but I had no idea where it was.
You know where it is now?
No, I would have thought that somebody would have found it.
Once Dan died, was there time to subdivide that property? Or once Dan died, was there time to subdivide that property?
No, no, at that point, I was just trying to get it cleaned up and put it on the market, and so I didn't lose my equity in it.
Because Dan died by murder, were all the insurance claims kind of come to a screeching halt?
Yes,
Slowed down?
yes,
Did you make all the claims
yes,
that you were legally entitled to make?
I'm pretty sure I did.
Did you feel guilty about making claims on policies you'd been paying on for all those years?
No, that's why I had him. I would have thought if the circumstances were reversed, I would have expected Dan to behave in exactly the same way.
Would you have wanted him to behave in the same way?
Absolutely. We didn't pay on that for any other reason than to protect the person who was left surviving.
Dan died and he was 64 years old.
He was 63. He would have been 64 on June 27th.
In a couple weeks.
Mm-hmm.
That very expensive return and premium policy that you'd bought, was that worth much more than the 100,000 term policy?
It wasn't worth any more than that. I could have, if I'd had a crystal ball that was working, I could have saved hundreds of dollars every month.
But because he died before the age of 78, all the things that, all the extra payments that you were making were to no benefit at all.
That's right.
Now it's August, you're cleaning out the house as fast as you can.
Mm-hmm.
About the time you got arrested, how empty was the house?
It was actually pretty empty. Uh, I'd gotten rid of most of the furniture, either in storage or I'd given it away. There were still boxes in the office, and I still had the bed upstairs. Uh, but pretty much we were close to being ready. We still had repair work we had to do, but I had done a lot of the inside touch-up painting toward the end of August, and so we were pretty close to ready.
How soon did you think you'd be able to have it on the market?
I thought by mid-September. And so I got arrested the 5th. I would have said 2 to 3 weeks after that. So maybe late September.
You weren't gonna make this extra premium of subdivision, though, you didn't have time to do that.
No?
Where did you think you were gonna go after the house was sold?
Well, I had had a slew of offers from people to come and stay and visit or stay, period. And that's happened up until even today, that I get offers from people who are friends and family who say, when you're out, you can come stay with me, But I didn't have a plan. Step, step, breathe, step doesn't allow for planning.
There have been testimony, I don't remember which witness, but there was testimony that somehow you were talking about moving to a condo.
Mm-hmm.
Was a condominium in one of the possibilities that you were considering after Dan died?
Well, sure. I mean, why would I want a farm when the farmer's dead? I don't want to maintain a couple of acres. I don't want to maintain a big house. A condo seemed ideal at that point, but it was like all other ideas I was having at that point. It lasted about this long before I went to another idea. I didn't have a firm idea. It was just an idea I'd flirted with. So,
Was there ever a time that you were expecting, for even a second, that you and Dan were gonna leave that house and move into a condominium?
oh, never. No. No. Even when Dan and I were living together before we were married, we were living in an apartment. And the thing I knew early on is that we had to get into a place where he could garden. He just needed the garden. He needed the earth more than anybody. When I told you he was different than anybody I've ever met, he was. But he and the earth were one. And they were one in some kind of unique ways, but he felt he was saving the planet one thing at a time by the way he collected stuff and by the way he recycled when he planted. For example, do you care if I just go on?
No.
Uh, we had, utility sink, those square plastic sinks. Dan picked those up for a song, and he buried a lot of things in those plants that had decent drainage, and uh, there were water lilies on top. I mean, he really utilized every inch of what he had. And he really cared. If it had been up to Dan, the entire yard would have been edible landscape. I just couldn't see corn growing in my living room. I mean, we really were, that was a joke and it wasn't even funny. I don't know why I told it. But he really cared about the environment in such a way that it was serious. He had an arrangement with Starbucks where uh, where he would go over and get these 5-gallon buckets full of coffee grounds week after week. And every week he came home with at least 8 to 10 of them. And I mean, really, our whole backyard, when we have to tell you we had good soil, we had good soil because Dan worked on it. We had good soil because he did this thing called lasagna gardening. And that's where in winter you layer your soil so that in spring when you're ready to plant, It's got newspaper in it. I think it's got straw in it, but it's several layers of different things, which is bringing nutrients back into the soil. Uh, there were, if I had ever said to him, well, I did say to him, I said, the kind of radishes I like the little long radishes that are called English radishes or breakfast radishes. Guess what we planted that year? We had English radishes or breakfast radishes.
Okay,
Sorry,
rabbit hole.
I am running on.
Rabbit hole now.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Sorry.
That's okay. I guess what I want to know is, that was that farmer's life.
Yes.
That layered lasagna garden,
You're right.
the corn growing in your living room, if that were to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Were those things that were going to happen with Dan?
Mm-hmm.
Could you imagine them happening without Dan?
No. No. I No. And I couldn't have imagined it happening with anybody, even somebody else who loved gardening as much as he did, because he just had a unique take on the world.
So I know that the summer of 2018 was disorienting,
Yes.
maybe even blurry.
Yes.
But when you imagined what life was going to be, was there any way to imagine that it was going to be the same?
Oh no. You know, one of the things that I said to the police and that embarrassed me endlessly was that I knew I was supposed to be thinking about Dan and what have you. And all I could think about, and this has probably been true the whole time, is how am I going to get by without him? If I had been given the choice, I would have much rather been the one that died than Dan, because I think he would have done better than I would have done on his own.
Still talk to him?
Every day.
Been a suggestion that your marriage deteriorated, or that somehow something had changed over those 24 years, 10 months, and 2 days, and that you felt differently about him in June of 2018.
Oh no. If anything, I said this earlier and I truly believe it. It's easy to be married during the good times. It's easy when there's no adversity. And for some people, adversity tears you apart and you realize you can't be married to this person anymore. For us, adversity actually brought us closer together. When we had the house fire, we were a team. When we went through our financial upheaval, we were a team. When we came up with a plan for our retirement, we were a team. There was never a point where we said this would certainly be easier with somebody else, because I never felt that way, and neither did he. When when the detectives, apparently we had some discovery, and they said, oh, they found someone Dan was having an affair with, and I said, not in this marriage, they didn't. And I was absolutely right that it was an earlier affair during the first marriage. And but I knew he had never cheated on me. I knew I'd never cheated on him. When the joke about you have to kiss a lot of toads to find the prince. Well, when you find the prince, you quit kissing the other toads. There's no percentage in it. So, and I thought we both felt that way.
And that never changed.
It never changed.
Did you kill Dan Brophy?
No, I did not.
I have no further questions.
Thank you.
All right, cross-examination?
Yes, thank you, Judge. Good afternoon, Ms. Brophy.
Good afternoon.
Back in 2018, did you carry a purse?
No,
Carry a wallet?
no.
How did you carry your critical pieces of information, like an ID and stuff like that?
In my bra. I know that's weird, but so much of what I did was not aided by having a purse. So I had my phone in my bra if I needed a driver's license or a card, and I rarely had cash. So in my bra.
And you wrote this letter to Dan in 2015
I did.
that's been referred to a couple of times. After you wrote that, did you print it?
Yes.
And what did you do with it?
I put it in an envelope, and it was a purple folder, and I put it on a desk that we shared. So if something happened and he came back and had to go through the desk, he would see it first thing.
And that was the only thing in that envelope?
Yes? Oh, no, there was probably copies of the policies in the envelope in addition, you know. I not only did I give him the information, I gave him the policies themselves.
And how would Dan know to have looked for that letter after, if you were to pass during that time?
I figured sooner or later he would go to our desk, is what I figured. That sooner or later he would be looking for something and there would be the photo with Dan on it and he would see it and read it and realize what he had.
Okay. So you put this letter and some policies perhaps and put them in this envelope, put it on the desk. And,
Folder.
I'm sorry, what did I
Purple,
say?
you said envelope. It's a purple folder.
Okay. Purple folder. And did you write his name on it?
Yes,
Okay.
in big letters.
Did you say something about a picture? Did you not say that?
I don't think so,
Oh, I'm sorry. So it says Dan on it.
right?
Okay. And is this a folder that closes, or like, is there a snap on it or anything like that?
Can you hold up that orange folder? Thank you. It's a folder just like this. It's a folder and it's purple.
Gotcha.
Thank you.
And so when you got back from your surgery,
Right?
was that folder still there,
It was.
right where you left it?
Yes.
Was there any indication to you that Dan had ever read that letter?
No. As far as I can tell, Dan never read it.
In that letter, you direct Dan to keep paying on the Americo policy because he'll get the premiums back in 9 years.
Yes, my math skills were a little iffy there.
And that's what I was going to ask you. Is your math wrong, or did you just have a typo, or what?
I'm going to tell you my math was either wrong or I had a typo. I had no idea, but it is wrong. You're absolutely right.
Because it's actually 19 years, right?
No. By that time, it was probably more like 15 years.
So probably not a typo then, because the 9 is. But he had about 15 more years that he needed to pay on.
I did.
Okay. And you knew that. You knew that about the policy.
I did.
And you also knew that if you were to get to that point where you were collecting, or I'm sorry, had the ability to collect the
Right.
premiums back, you knew then that if you were to take that money back, that you'd actually have to give up the policy.
Nope.
You didn't know that?
No. I could continue paying on the policy for Dan, but I could take the money out of it.
Didn't your insurance expert testify? Did you hear him testify and say that if you were to take that money out of that policy, that you would have had to forfeit the policy?
If they said that, I didn't understand, but I can tell you this. They have a schedule in the policy that shows what happens if you have this money. For example, if Dan died when he was 78, we didn't get 100,000 back. We got 167,000 back. But if we took the 67,000 out of it, we could continue paying for the policy. Now, that's not to say it was a 20-year term. That's not to say they might not raise the premium on it, but we could continue paying for it.
You disagree with your insurance expert?
I disagree with that aspect if that's what they really said.
Okay. And this, you said, was part of a bigger retirement plan, correct?
It was?
Correct. And so, this idea that, I mean, would you agree it's pretty risky?
What is risky?
Well, the one, you have to live to be able to collect on the policy, right?
Well, yeah.
Okay. And if you don't want to give up that well, I guess you disagree with that notion that you have to give up the policy. So I guess I'll just ask you this. You agree that you paid 3 to 6 times
Yes.
more for that policy than what you could have bought a similar coverage for?
I do.
And so,
Purposefully.
and just asking, you know, did you guys have the thought that, well, maybe we should put this money away and actually be able to access it whenever we need it, instead of risking not getting it at all? Did you have that discussion?
Okay, I need to break that down and answer your
Yeah,
question in
let me ask you in a
segments.
series of questions.
Okay.
instead. Did you have the discussion with Dan that, well, maybe we don't want to spend all this money on a policy right now? Let's pay for a cheaper policy, but let's put some money away, like as if we were putting it in to the life insurance.
We would have had that discussion if either one of us were savers.
Yeah.
But at that point, I knew I was not a saver. So I understand this about myself. Part of the reason why I have forced savings policies is because I know I'm not a saver. And if I can put this money away where I can't get to it, we will have it later on when we need it. If we're just doing a savings account or we're investing in the stock market,
Sure.
I'm not good like that.
But you agree that you treated the forester's policy that also had this savings component. You know, it's forced savings, but you were just taking the money. Is
I
that
took
right?
the money out when we needed it because it was there, because why we had it was for A, retirement, but B, emergencies, and this qualified as an emergency.
Not much of a forced savings though, if you're just taking the money out, right?
That is true.
And in
But-
fact, you didn't pay that back either.
No, we did not, but part of our plan was to pay that back. When we sold the house, we were going to overfund the policy.
Sure. And in that Dearest Dan letter, you also told Dan, or you were writing at least, that he should try to collect on a Conseco policy, even though you knew that it wasn't really enforced, correct?
No, it had been, let me go back and explain that a little differently. It had been Universal Life. Conseco had an iffy reputation at that point. We had decided to let that go. But when you have Universal Life that you can't borrow against, it continues on because the money you have in there continues to pay the policy. So I knew it was being paid, even though I had stopped paying on it. I knew there was a real good possibility it was in force.
I see. You just weren't really sure.
Right.
Okay. And when you, 4 days after Dan's murder, you called Detective Posey, is that right?
No. Dan died Saturday morning. I called Monday afternoon.
That's when you called Detective Posey regarding the insurance policy?
Right.
And that
I-
was,
I had done what they had told me. I'd called my insurance companies and started the claim, and that's when we had a conversation. And then I called Holly, and then I called Detective Posey.
we'll break that
I'm
down. I just want to.
sorry.
You're saying that was on the 4th.
I think so. I think it was that Monday.
And if your call records show that it was actually the 6th?
It could have been.
Okay.
The call records are going to be more accurate at this point than I am.
And also on the 6th, you actually, well, during that phone call with Detective Posey, you only disclosed a $40,000 policy.
Yes, but he
Remember
didn't ask me about anything else.
I understand. I don't think he even asked you about that. Isn't it true that you actually just offered that it was
That's
just a
true.
$40,000 policy?
Hmm.
The smallest of all of your policies,
No, it wasn't the smallest, but it was a small policy.
besides the Life Map $2,500
Right,
policy.
but it was the smallest.
The only one you
That one.
offered to Detective Posey was the smallest policy.
Yes.
During the same conversation that you're asking him for a letter of exoneration.
I'm asking to see if that's something that he would have said, oh, sure, we'll do that for you. Or if he said no. I mean, I was prepared for the worst. I was prepared for him to say no.
Sure. Isn't it true that you actually talked to all your insurance policy companies
did.
that day?
I did. And not a one of them asked for that, but Forrester's.
Okay, so you called all your life insurance companies,
Mm-hmm.
notified them of Dan's death.
Yes.
One of them asked you for a letter of exoneration.
Mm-hmm.
You asked Detective Posey for that.
I asked if it was possible to get that.
So when did Susan Estrada get into town?
Susan got in, Dan, okay, let me think for a minute here. Susan got in on that Friday, the following Friday. So Dan died on Saturday the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th. She would have gotten into town on the 8th of June.
So you would agree that she was not with you when you made that call to Detective Posey?
I would. And I don't think I think I told her about it and her memory was just off on it.
Sure. She
I
was
don't
not
think-
sitting next to you while you made that call.
No, I would think that, I would think that after 4 years, her memory was just fuzzy.
Oh, I'm sorry. Were you telling us why she forgot or something?
I was telling you what I thought happened. I thought her memory was fuzzy on what happened.
Based on your work history and Dan's work history,
Right.
would you expect Dan's Social Security income to be higher than yours?
Oh, we already knew it was. Social Security sends you a statement, I think every quarter, and they tell you if you work till this age, it'll be this much. If you work till this age, it'll be this much. We knew his was a lot higher.
And when Dan could have started collecting that at 65?
He could have started collecting at 62,
Right.
but we decided not to do it
Until when?
until he was 70, when we got the maximum benefit out of it.
I see. But you chose to draw yours sooner.
I did.
You started drawing yours at 65.
I know. I started drawing mine at either 66 or 67. I'm not sure which one we decided on. It might have been 66. No, I think it was 67 that I started drawing it.
If Dan had started drawing at the time that he died, what would he have been able to collect?
I don't know.
But it was more than yours.
It was a lot more than mine. You know, he was employed and I was self-employed. And if I declared a loss in my company one year, and believe me, in 2002, 2003, after 911, I had losses. And if I declared a loss, then Social Security was also part of that, and you didn't have to pay. So my Social Security was a lot less than his was.
And isn't it true that if Dan's, after he died, you could actually collect his Social Security instead of your own?
I'm not sure exactly how that works. I know that's the theory, but I think he had to have claimed it first before I could have claimed it for me. You know what I'm saying? If he hasn't claimed it, then I can't come in and claim it. But I could be wrong on that. You know, Social Security is like Medicare. It's 8 million rules that are secretly hidden in a mayonnaise jar somewhere.
You hadn't done any research on that, even though you guys were approaching or looking at retirement planning?
Yeah, but we weren't looking at retirement planning where Dan was dead.
Right.
You know, that wasn't part of the plan. You know, the plan was he was going to take Social Security at 70.
And when were you actually planning on selling the house? When were you, before Dan died, what was the plan for when the house was going to go on the market?
It was, okay, I was aiming for September. He said, I want to garden one more year around the edges while they finish it up. So he was aiming for later in the fall.
Okay, so you guys agreed that fall of 2018.
Yes. But later in the fall probably meant October, not December.
Sure. What does downsizing mean to you?
Well, we had a 4-bedroom house and there were 2 of us. We didn't need that much space. We had a 4-bedroom house with a full basement. And, you know, yes, I think Dan needed some sort of space for his stuff, but we didn't need that kind of, we needed a good kitchen and, real frankly, a couple of bedrooms. And I like a nice bath, but other than that, I'm really pretty flexible.
And you had started to look at some properties?
No, we had started to locate properties. We hadn't looked at them. You know, we just said, look, I found some things in this area.
What kind of price range were you looking in?
Well, what we wanted to do is be able to pay it completely off. And we thought we would have about $400,000 to do that with. So we were probably looking in the 350 price range,
Yeah.
somewhere like that.
And you're saying out in the kind of halfway to the coast?
Well, Dan liked Delilah's property, and it is east of Banks. It is west of Banks. It's toward the coast. I like Vernonia. Vernonia is this charming, charming little town. It has a lake. It has this downtown that on the light posts, they have these metal cutouts of bears messing with honey. It has flat land. It has no trees. I liked Vernonia. Now, Vernonia was a little further on and to, I'm going to say, the northwest. But it still would have been a straight shot down 26 pretty much.
How many times did you visit Vernonia?
Oh, I was in Vernonia all the time. I had clients there. I liked the town. When we started talking about there, I'd gone down there 2 or 3 times and looked around at the houses and the neighborhoods and what we could get. So yeah, I was in Vernonia a fair amount.
When you were going to sell your house, would you agree that you had about a little under $250,000 owed on your mortgage?
I would think that's right.
And you did sell your house later that year, is that correct?
No, I sold it the next year. I sold it in 2019.
Oh, when in 2019?
I'm going to say February, March, somewhere in there, maybe as late as April.
And it sold for about $565,000.
Yes.
So after fees and realtor fees and all that, would you agree that you probably would make a little less than 250,000?
I didn't see the settlement statements on that, so I really don't know.
Okay. But that wouldn't, okay, well, we'll move on then. Now, you said part of the reason of selling the house was basically you don't necessarily want stairs anymore.
Yes.
But at the time that Dan died and the time you guys were deciding to sell the house, you two were both relatively healthy still.
Yes.
You could still do the stairs just fine.
I was struggling with arthritis in my knee, but yeah,
Okay, but you didn't, you still had your bedroom upstairs.
we did.
You didn't move down to the main floor to deal
No.
with that. I was a little confused about the discussion of the tiny houses.
Oh,
So whose idea was that?
it was Dan's.
Okay.
Dan, who needs more room than anybody I know, said, "Oh, we could live in a tiny house." No, we couldn't. But his fantasy life, like mine, is going to be an expat. Dan's was we could live in these little tiny houses, and that would work fine for us. And I thought, smaller than our kitchen now, which Dan was spilling out of. No, we couldn't live like that. And the other thing is you have to be in really good health to live in a tiny house because most of the bedrooms are loft-like bedrooms and you have to climb up this ladder, night and day to get up there. Plus, I mean, real frankly, once you hit that 40 age group, you and I both know that we're up more in the middle of the night than we've ever wanted to be. And I don't want to go up and down the stairs or the ladder 18 times in the middle of the night.
So was he joking or?
No, he was serious, but it was a fantasy. It was like lots of things. It was like my wanting to go to Portugal. This would be a fabulous idea. And so, we sing and dance to the other one, and the other one pokes a hole in that balloon, and says, that's not going to work for us.
But so his ideal situation was that he would have his own tiny house and you would have your own.
No, he would, he would have a house for junk, and then he would live in mine where it would be tidy.
So the plan was to subdivide this property.
Yes.
You and Dan discussed, was it to, I wasn't quite clear on this. You weren't going to divide it into 3 lots like your neighbor, correct?
We didn't think we could. We thought we needed 2 lots to make it work.
Why did you conclude that you couldn't do that?
Well, we could have done that, but here's the thing. In order to bring the driveway all the way through, sitting right in the middle of that's a garage. So we have to tear this garage down, which isn't a great loss, except the house in front now no longer has a garage. So now we have to figure out what to do. But if we'd brought it all the way down and only divided it in half, we could have put a garage back here with the driveway that turned into it.
Okay. So ultimately that was the plan?
Ultimately, but it was one of many plans, I would say.
Okay. And you reached out to Richard Frymark to sort of start that process? And
no, I reached out not to start the process, but to consult with Richard, who I've always thought had great ideas. And Richard then told me how to start.
Sure. I guess that's what I meant. I apologize.
Okay.
To consult. And then he gave you some names of some people to contact?
He did.
And did they provide you some information on how to?
They did, but we never we never set up an appointment. We talked about it and they said, when you get closer, you get the backyard cleaned up, give us a call and now we'll look seriously at it.
And who did you talk to out of the people that he told you to call?
K and something engineering, I have it written down somewhere.
Okay.
But I called whoever he recommended and he'd even given me a name of a guy.
You heard him testify and rattle off a few names of people that he told you to call.
Yeah,
When one of those people is one of the people you called?
yes.
Do you remember that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And what kind of information did he give you?
To clean up the property and then we'd look at it. You
Okay.
know, there was nothing they could do with the condition it was in at that point.
I could be wrong, but is that K&S Engineering? Is that right, or something like that?
Or was it K and N? It was K and somebody,
Okay.
you know,
I'm not going to hold you to it. I just,
yeah.
it's just ringing in the top of my head. So,
Uh-huh,
but K and something Engineering,
uh-huh,
nonetheless, one of the names that he gave you.
uh-huh.
Okay. Is that Nick White? Does that sound familiar? Or is it one of the other names?
It could have been, I don't know. I mean, at this point, I'm guessing.
Okay. Well, let's not do that. I'm just
Okay.
seeing if you remember. So, did you talk to anybody else out of that group of people that he had given you?
No, because once they said clean up the yard, that was where we focused our energy.
Okay. And when was that again?
You know, once again, I'm guessing. I would have to go back and look at the date, but we talked to Richard about this in at least 2017, but it could even have been as early as 2016.
Okay. And it was after that conversation with him that you decided to go and make sure that you were on the deed?
No, Richard pulled up our information and he said, Nancy, you're not on the deed. There was no
Right.
making sure. He said, you need to do this. And he sent me paperwork to do it.
Yeah, and maybe my question was bad. It was after that that you went to correct that.
Right,
Okay. Based on the information you were getting from Mr. Frymark.
right.
You said that Dan had fallen in love with Delilah
Dala?
Delilah Marvell's property.
Uh-huh.
But hadn't he only been out there one time?
Yes, but he walked the property. It's 80 acres. He and Delilah were friends. Delilah had been his student. Delilah had come back and do mushroom hunting, but he realized it was a type of property that he could have made work. So maybe it wasn't that he was in love with her property per se, as it was the type of property and the location that he could have made work.
You said you weren't looking at homes yet, but had you contacted a realtor to talk about options yet?
No,
Okay. What about to put your house on the market?
no. I mean, I talked to the realtor who lives down the block and he gave me some advice, but once again, the advice was clean up the backyard.
And that realtor was Paul Johnston,
Yes,
and he's a realtor neighbor of yours?
yes.
And did you and Dan and him talk about that?
I would say if he and Dan talked, Paul had been a chef, and Paul is also a serious gardener. In fact, his entire front yard is a garden, and I knew Dan secretly envied that, but I was holding on to the front yard. But no, what they would have talked about, I'm betting, rather than what the property's worth, is how did you grow this? How did you make that?
Sure.
Dan made a Worcestershire sauce. It was really, really good. He made a Tabasco sauce that that Paul made one that was similar. And so, you know, it was that kind of exchange of information, you know.
You saw them having those types of conversations?
Yeah, I mean, Paul's out all the time and they're walking the dogs and, you know, we're walking the dogs. Dan is, and yeah, and during that, you know, I know we shared the habanero sauce with him, and I know we shared the Northwest sauce, the Worcestershire sauce.
Did Paul ever come over to the house and actually look at the yard?
Not until after Dan died.
And I know you said that they had conversations, but mostly around probably food.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Gardening.
you know, I'm sorry?
Gardening.
Oh, and gardening, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You never saw them, or you were never around when they talked about the property, selling the property?
No.
You as part of your retirement plan, you said the 35,000 was meant to catch up on the mortgage because you guys had fallen behind,
Right,
and get the yard ready.
right.
Why didn't you guys use that to pay down your high interest credit cards?
Because Dan was already doing that. If you recall when Ms. Crouch testified, she testified that he had already started on that plan
Right.
with the Avamere money. The Avamere money was for that. This money was for the house.
Right, but I
And
mean,
trading one interest loan for another interest loan wasn't really working. You know, we needed to pay off the credit cards. That's absolutely true. But we needed to get the house in shape.
what was the interest on the credit card?
I don't know.
It's about 15%.
You know, I don't know because Dan paid them and he paid attention. And, but I think one of them was higher than the other.
What was the interest on the 401k loan?
It wasn't very high at all. It was a really low interest. I was kind of surprised by that, but I can't tell you exactly what it was.
So let's just hypothetically,
Okay.
if Dan's credit card was 15%,
It was probably 5 on the 401k
right?
loan.
So would you agree
Mhm.
that it would make more sense to pay off a higher interest credit card and then just save that money or use that for something else?
I would agree if, in fact, we hadn't already had a plan in place and working on it.
We heard a lot about the yard.
Mm,
A lot about the yard. We got a little conflicting information
okay.
about who actually cleaned it.
Yes. I heard that myself.
What do you have to say about? What do you have to say about that?
Yeah, James Denny did the heavy duty work. Trust me, he had the tractor, he did the heavy duty work. But Susan and her boyfriend did a lot. They called it something else, but I thought it was a ditch witch. And they pulled up a lot of the blackberries. So it was a combination effort that everybody's laying claim to, and I don't care. Fine. As long as it got done, I didn't need to, I could have handed out ribbons. You got this, you got that, but that was just sarcastic. Ignore that. What I would really say is everybody worked hard on it. Everybody deserved credit for it.
Sounds like you had a lot of help.
I did.
Guessing, you can correct me if I'm wrong, that help was maybe available to you before Dan died as well.
No, not in the way you're talking about.
Which way am I talking about?
Well, I mean, I cannot imagine having 35 friends drop by to help you pack when Dan's alive. I just can't even imagine they would think that was a fun idea. Now, I would tell you that before Dan died, I had friends who came over and helped me organize. Linda Smith is a librarian, and I can tell you that our books never looked better than when she came over and did them. I had other people who would help me with organizational things, but no, I don't see 35 people. I couldn't even imagine Dan thinking that would be a good idea. Having 35 people come to our house to help us pack.
Just to
No.
be clear, what you're saying right now is what you think that I was going to ask you.
Oh, yeah. So perhaps I've jumped the gun, and I believe my lawyers have suggested to me I not do that. What I thought you were asking was, did I have that same type of help available to me before Dan died? And I thought you were talking about the 35 people who helped me pack. Is that not what you were talking about?
I was just going to ask you if you called Jack Brophy to come help you with something, would he do it?
Oh, Jack Brophy was, you have no idea how much help he was. If I had an issue with something, he would come and help me. Jack was great for us. You couldn't have asked for a better father-in-law.
You had a lot to do to get ready to sell that house, right?
I did.
Besides the yard,
Mm-hmm.
what was it that you were doing to get ready to sell the house?
It was beyond the yard. It was also the basement. It was also the garage. It was also the packing. It was also getting down to the point that you could look to see what actually needed to be done on the house in terms of repairs to have the house ready.
So what of that were you doing to get ready to sell? And I'm talking about before Dan died.
Oh, before Dan died, uh, we were going through areas and cleaning up. For example, bathroom drawers, the simple, stupid stuff that manages to grow like mushrooms in there. But we were working on it. We just weren't pushing it as hard as we would have been.
Even though you're planning on putting it on the market in a few months?
Yes?
Or you agree that the basement was full,
The basement was full.
garage was full.
The garage was full.
Sounds like the rest of the house was full.
Not in the same way.
So what you had done up to the point of Dan's death to prepare to sell the house was have the yard worked on, and you cleaned out some bathroom drawers.
No. I mean, we talked seriously about, real frankly, we probably had 1,000 books. We went through our books. We discussed what we needed to do about those. And in the end, we didn't do that at all. What we did was I donated them to the library. We were working on things. We were going through things that we regarded as important to us, but not necessarily something somebody else wanted. We had a booth at one of the garage sale places, and we started hauling stuff over there and selling it through the garage sale places. And that's how we ended up getting the storage building to begin with, was through the garage sales place.
And after Dan died, your plans for moving, I know there's mention of a condo. I think your attorney asked you about the condo.
Mm-hmm.
But you're saying that wasn't an idea in your head until after Dan had died.
Oh, no. Oh, no.
And did you have any thoughts of moving to Arizona or Texas or Nevada, anything like that?
No, those places are hot. I don't know anybody in Arizona or Nevada. I know too many people in Texas.
Okay. You planned on staying in the area?
Not necessarily, but I wouldn't have moved someplace south.
Where were you going to move?
I have friends in Colorado, and I might have considered that. I always liked living in Colorado.
I think there's been a lot of testimony, and I'm assuming you'll agree, that Dan was a really beloved member of the community,
Yes, he was.
held in high regard.
Yes, he did.
Would you agree that his death was a devastating blow to the entire community?
I would. As
Everybody loved Dan, right?
far as I know.
Yeah.
I certainly did. But I would have people come up to me all the time and say, "You're Chef Brophy's wife?" I love Chef Brophy. And I said, "Me too,"
Right. You're talking about before.
before.
And then after, outpouring of love and support for this man.
Yes. And he deserved every bit of it.
Is it fair to say that there's numerous qualities that Dan had that you admired,
Yes.
and that he admired about you?
Yes.
I mean, in some ways, we're even envious of the way that people looked up to him. And
Oh, no. Oh, no. I can remember a dinner that Karen and I and Dan went to, and we all sat down at the table. I think it was back when Hall Street Grill was still in business, and appetizers came out, and we all looked at each other and said, "We didn't order anything." And the person putting it down said, "No, the guys in the kitchen saw Chef Brophy come in, and they wanted him to try this appetizer plate." It was nothing to go to dinner with Dan and have the chef come out of the kitchen and sit down and say, "We're thinking about changing our menus, and here's what we're thinking about doing. What do you think of that?" Uh, that was not envious. That was proud. I was delighted that people thought so highly of this man, and with reason. He was smart, and he gave them his full attention and gave them his best possible answer. That was never even a minor irritation for him.
do you think the way that people thought of Dan and treated him, that they then transferred that to you as well?
There was some of that, yes. I thought that I got some of that as well, and uh, that the fact that when I had a catering company and he talked to his class about my catering company, that my catering company gained a better reputation also as a result.
Is there anything that you did yourself in the community? Well, let me ask you this. Did you think that you were held in high regards in the community as well?
Yes, but not in the same way.
Did that make you jealous?
Oh no. Oh no. That made me proud that we were a couple who went together. Uh, there was no jealousy there. Uh, First off, Dan was so humble that being jealous would have been just completely out of the picture. I mean, this was a guy who wasn't gloating because people felt that way. This was a man who was quietly pleased. But no, I was never jealous that he was like that.
I assume he wasn't jealous of you either.
I'm, I can't imagine why he would be, you know. But no, he talked about me to his classes, and he had a joke that I was management. Let me tell you a story, and I think this kind of sums it up. Dan was co-teaching with another instructor, and the other instructor was whining because he said it's so hard to to cook with your wife because they don't understand mise en place, and so mise en place really is get your stuff together before you start cooking. That's a translation I'm sure the French would roll their eyes at. But they turned to Dan and they said, well, you don't have that problem because your wife is culinarily educated. And Dan said, I don't have that problem for another reason. And they said, uh, what is that reason? And he said, my wife doesn't cook. And so I think they spoke kind of slowly to him in case he wasn't catching on and said, your wife owns a catering company. How can you say she doesn't cook? And he said, my wife hires people to cook. My wife can close the deal. And that was the first time that I thought he actually understands completely what it is that I do. And there was no jealousy there. There was pride, you know. And yeah, I never cooked a meal in 25 years. So 24 years, 10 months, whatever.
Is that the end of the story?
Yes, it is. I'm sorry.
What did you normally order from Starbucks?
Oh, venti non-fat 2 equal latte. He ordered, uh, a chai tea latte. Uh, we had our drinks.
Did Dan know your order?
Oh, yeah.
Did he often go to Starbucks in the morning to get your
He did.
coffee? Was that really the routine?
That was really the routine.
You would wake up, stay in bed, he'd bring you Starbucks.
Even when we were on vacation, he would go out and find coffee for me. And even if we were in a foreign country, you know, that was our routine. And he would come back and I would get up and get dressed and drink coffee.
Is that every day or most days?
Most days, you know. He was a tea drinker, and so he drank Lapsang Susong. And Lapsang Susong is a strong smoky tea. And I love this about him. He drank that because he read a book by James Michener called Centennial. And in it, they talked about how the Scottish traders drank this smoky tea. And Dan was so interested in it, he went out and got some and tried it and liked it. Now, how can you not love a guy who has chosen a literary reference for his tea? You know, we were a team.
In the morning that Dan died, you expected him to have a cup of his tea.
I did.
You told that to the police?
I did.
That was true.
Yes.
Carried it pretty much in the same cup.
Yes. We had a number of those cups. He could change them out.
I don't want to jump too far ahead, but the idea that somebody had maybe gone to Starbucks that morning, maybe not, I don't know. Do you recall back, did you have a Starbucks at any time that morning?
I did.
Just don't know how you got it.
It was part of my routine. That's all I can tell you. I don't remember it. I just know that it was part of my routine.
Could Dan have brought it to you?
At that point, no. He had live fire that day. He would never have stopped to do something like that when his day was already going to be as packed as it was.
You knew about that live fire.
I did.
We'll talk about that in just a little bit, okay?
Okay.
You testified that you read an article regarding ghost guns or gun build kits, and you found yourself on the website searching around. What, I mean, you're saying you bought this gun kit as a research. When did that story start in your head?
It came together when I read that story. When I read that article in the paper about this guy, and all of a sudden I knew how I could twist it and make it into a story. You know, ideas come, out of the blue, and when they come sailing by, you write them down so you don't forget them, and then sometimes you act on them.
And that was November of 2017?
Sometime in November
That you
of
read-
17.
You read the article, started doing research.
Mm-hmm.
And you visited the Ghost Guns website several times without purchasing anything.
That's true.
And what were you searching for on the Ghost Guns website?
Research.
What were you looking for?
I was looking, keep in mind, I know nothing about guns at this point. I knew nothing about guns. And so what I was trying to do, if I'm going to write a story on building a gun, I got to learn a lot about guns in the time frame that I have. I cannot be the person who knows nothing and write a story anybody would believe.
Okay. And were you doing other research online regarding ghost gun build kits?
Not that I remember. I was pretty happy with the Ghost Gun site, and I know there were other sites that did similar things, but the Ghost Gun site made it seem simpler than some of the others.
Okay. And you felt that it provided you some information on how the build would occur?
Yes.
Were there plans or anything on there?
What do you mean exactly? Plans? You mean like architectural plans, like plans that show like when you're putting IKEA furniture together plans?
I guess. I don't know.
Not that I saw.
And so I guess what you're saying is then when you decided to purchase one, you just thought that it was going to be easier to build.
I leap into the water first. Yes. Dan's our researcher in that regard.
You are a researcher, or you're not?
No, I said that backwards. I am a person who, once I have an idea, tends to leap forward. Dan, once he has an idea, tends to research it to death. And then the chickens are a perfect example of this. He would read to me at night from the romantic books called Chickens in Your Backyard or Chicken Tractors. But when we got chickens, Dan had a whole plan for how they were going to work. If I had thought, hey, chickens would be fun, we would have had a plan, build it as you go plan. He was just a planner, and I was not.
So were you researching for a book or not?
I'm sorry, did I go off target there? I was researching for a book, but I wasn't researching beyond here. Let me see if I can say this simpler than I'm doing it. I was researching for a book, but it didn't occur to me that putting the ghost gun together would be as complicated as it was. What occurred to me was, hey, here's this system I can use. And now that you mention it, when I got the ghost gun in this little case, there was instructions in there, I'm fairly sure. I'm not sure now that I've said that, sorry.
Had you finished your answer? All right, we are now at 4:45, so let's break for today and resume again at 9 o'clock tomorrow.
Okay, we'll go off right now. All right.